All right, well, we're starting off with a bang. I already forgot to put the starting stream little thing up first, so we're just gonna get straight into it, everybody. Thank you for showing up. JP Marquardt has just placed first place with what is not right now a meta pick for an army, even though we all love them very, very much. And the Warpstorm 2022 GT was just about 2 weeks ago now.
I think it was just technically, yeah, just about 2 weeks, a week and a half, basically.
Awesome. Well, hey man, thank you so much for joining us. For the viewers out there, please jump in at any time, ask questions as to why we do this live in the first place. And thank you all for swinging by as well. And we're just gonna get right into me grilling the hell out of you, JP. So, how long you've been playing Warhammer? How'd you find it? How'd you pick it up? And why'd you pick Grey Knights?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. I guess 40K is kind of like a weird odyssey for me. I played 40K when I was in like middle school, which was a long time ago, and high school for a little bit. So that was like, I graduated high school in 2004. So probably the last time I played 40K until this year was 2003 or 2004. And then I went off to college and I did a bunch of other stuff. And then I'm currently in residency, so I'm really busy. Go ahead.
Oh, you're a doctor. Very cool.
I am, yes.
Feel free to swear, by the way. Like,
okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Maybe don't go like Navy level of swearing, but like if you want to drop a shit or a fuck, it's fine.
Okay. I thought about that as I was doing it. Yeah, so I didn't play for a long time, and then I'm a resident. I'm generally don't have a lot of time, and then this last year I started my research 2 years of dedicated research time, and my schedule opened up a ton, and I missed a lot of my like nerdy stuff, video games, board games, all that sort of stuff. And I think I don't know what I feel like I was like there was an ad or something, or like I saw a video and like it just popped up or something about 40K, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that game, and I like looked at it and I was like, man, I really missed this game. This game was awesome back when I was like 16. And so then that was like beginning of this year, and I actually bought a few models of AdMech because I was like, this army didn't exist back when I played, and they looked really cool. And then I was like, I only have so much time to paint, and when I look, I apparently need like hundreds of these little guys to do and stuff. And I was like,
Scutari,
I always thought, yeah, maybe not the best time sync for me. And I also, when I was a kid, I didn't paint
little
so well.
legs.
Yeah, the tiny little
arms
thing.
and legs. Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I didn't like do great, I think, at the whole painting and modeling part. And this time I was like, I want to make it look good and I want to take my time. So I was like, what's something that has like, I really like their whole style and look, and also is not a million models. And I looked at Grey Knights because the Inquisitors, I think, were a thing when I was a kid, and like Grey Knights had just kind of existed. And I love like medieval knights, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I'll pick them.
Who doesn't?
And then yeah, so I bought the models and just started painting them up. And I hadn't like met anyone, hadn't played a game, and I just signed up for an RTT because I was like, if I don't sign up for something, I'm never going to finish them making the models. So my first game was the first game in RTT in July this year. And my wife helped me paint actually like the night before as I was like getting everything battle ready.
Wow. That's love, man.
That is love. Yes, she does. She does love me. She's very supportive. So anyways, yeah, so that was my first. So I've been playing since July, after my like, 18-year hiatus or whatever. So
cool, man. So why Grey Knights?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why. Like, easy
that's
to.
The main reason. And then after I played like a couple of games with them, I love like that they interact in all the phases. Like the psychic is something really cool. The fact you can psychic, shoot, charge. I love the look of the models is so cool. Like I love just the like look like knights. I think knights of any sort are awesome. And also I kind of liked after I started playing them, they weren't necessarily the best thing, and it felt really like a puzzle to try to make them be better or to try to win games. And then the last thing that I found I've really fallen in love with is the mobility. I love that you can like teleport stuff around, that you have interceptors, that you can deep strike things.
Gosh,
I realize that, and so I want that for any future armies I play.
Yeah, I love all the movement shenanigans, because when you look at the army on paper, you're like, oh, it's kind of slow, except for, the interceptors. But then you realize, oh no, they can be anywhere they want at any time.
Yeah. The teleporting has definitely won me a lot of games just by being able to move around. So I definitely love it like that.
Well, you have an interesting list with some interesting tech, so we're gonna switch right over to the list right now, and we're gonna get involved in that discussion. So first of all, right off the bat, you went Blades of Victory. This is an uncommon, very uncommon choice for your Brotherhood.
Yeah. I have gone back and forth between Prescient Brethren and Blades of Victory. And I'm sure I can honestly just tell you Blades of Victory is probably not the best, but I watched Derek Appish, he plays Grey Knights. He has like a channel too, and I watched
Yeah,
his like breakdown of a GT he won earlier this year, and he played Blades of Victory and talked
yeah.
about the pregame move and stuff.
He will
Um,
actually be on my show on Sunday morning.
Nice. Well, I've only messaged with him a little bit. He's a very nice guy, and
Very
he
nice
seems
guy.
really
Yeah.
obviously good. He's done really well with Grey Knights over and over. But yeah, I watched that, and then I played it one time at a tournament, and I got second, I think, in that tournament, and went or at RTT, and that went pretty well. And I think I found that that pregame move could be so critical on for a few reasons. And I guess one is we do player place terrain for like all the local things around here in the Milwaukee area.
That's very common here too. Yeah.
And a lot of times I need to I want my terrain in certain places for like later in the game, but it can hamper me in the first turn if I go second and I'm just like, I have to leave something out. And so that getting something forward really helps there. And then I looked specifically, they released the mission packet for this whole tournament, the 2-day thing. And I knew the first day just to get to the top 8 was had 2 6 objective missions, and it had and I looked at that, and when I played those, that pregame move was just huge, getting me like out there and getting me ahead on Purifying Ritual and banners or whatever it was. So that was a big reason. And then the being able to reroll charges is just kind of a nice CP saver for interceptors who don't really have much else useful to cast. But the main thing is really just that pregame move. I I went first a lot, and it made a huge difference. I got lucky in that sense, but I think it helps. I don't think it's the best Brotherhood, but I think for that tournament, it just like worked really well.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, the Vanguard aggression is really, really good. Rerolling charges really, really good. What's the stratagem?
It's a mortal wounds and engagement range at the end of the charge phase. It's like I
Huh.
think I like actually never used it because Grey Knights need CP so badly that like
Yeah.
I'm scrapping by for every one I can for what I really need them for.
Which is
But I
why
want to use it someday.
which is why folks usually go Prestigian Brethren,
Yeah.
because you can end up getting, 2 or 3 CP back or more over the course of a game. But I love
Yeah.
this like tech choice. Like right off the bat, we're already getting into some pretty cool stuff.
I,
Um,
I did Prussian for the RTT right before this that I got first at, and the Prussian Brethren were overall good, but I failed that psychic power so many times that it just like pissed me off, and I was like, I don't want another psychic power I could fail that's going to annoy me. Like if it were Warp Charge 5 or 4 or something like, but the Warp Charge 6, I feel like it's just so easy to fail. I'm not going to spend CP to reroll to gain a CP. It just started pissing me off.
oh,
So
I see.
not
I got
logical,
you.
but like
Yeah.
emotionally, I didn't want to do it again. So
I feel
I
you.
got rid of it.
One of my first great RTTs ever, Caldor Drago, was my like gate guy. He was supposed to cast gate. That's like all he was really there for. He failed every single time for the whole tournament, all 3 games. Every time I cast, he either like perils and it didn't go off, or he just didn't cast it.
Yeah, yeah. I killed
Oh
Drago
man,
in one game because he failed and killed himself twice in a row and
beautiful.
maxed mortal wounds or whatever after he'd taken one wound.
So before we jump into your HQs, we already have a question. It is, what are your guys' opinions on purifiers and Castle and Crow as mechanics that bypass a lot of the layered defenses that we're seeing in the game? I assume he means things like trans hit, transhuman, -1 to hit, -1 to be wounded, all that jazz. He has found them good counters with reliable use without buffs. So, what are your thoughts on lots of
Yeah.
purifiers and Crow?
Yeah, I bought a Crow and I haven't built, but I haven't played with them yet. And I want to play Purifiers, but I'm buying. They didn't have I don't have a Rhino yet, and I feel like I really want
Mm.
a Rhino for to have that option. So I haven't actually played with it. This is kind of the problem with only starting in July. Like I built the models I have. I added like some Interceptors and some more Paladins, and I haven't built even like everything or played with everything in the Codex yet. But I feel like Purifying Flame is awesome. I really like it. The problem with Crow is I feel like your 3 HQ choices, like it's hard to get more than 3. You don't, Temple Patrol doesn't feel really worth it. And
Not in Grey Knights, no.
and I think that like it's really hard to not do Drago, a Grandmaster, Nemesis Dreadknight, and a Librarian. Like Librarian is 100%. I would never, ever, ever not have the Librarian. And then the other two feel Drago feels kind of critical for my list. I think if you're running a lot of Dreadknights, he's probably not as good. But still, I mean, full rerolls is still pretty good. But I think if you're running like Interceptors or getting like running stuff in, the Drago rerolls are so key. And then the Grandmaster Nemesis Dreadknight is just like with Sigil of Exigent is like just such an insanely good character.
Oh, yeah.
At some point he becomes just a Dreadknight, but for a long time he's like a whole level above.
Yeah.
So I just think it'd be hard to fit him in for the HQs, but I do want to try Purifiers for sure. That's on my to-do list.
So one of the lists I was practicing with for a while was a Mortal Wound spam list, basically, and I had 3 units of Purifiers and Crow and a bunch of strikes and stuff, and the idea, and the Mortal Wounds Libby, and if this list popped off, you could do up in the high 20s in Mortal Wounds, which was absolutely bonkers. But then I realized in my meta, we have 3 really good Custodes players, and they all run whatever the host is
Like
that has,
4 up
like,
against Mortals
yeah, the 4 up to Mortal Wounds is like, wow,
Yeah.
never mind.
Yeah.
Not even worth it. But on paper, yeah, like just being able to run into, say, a like an Iron Warriors Terminator brick of 10 with all of those like layered defenses and just dropping 20 mortal wounds on them and being like, well, there goes, 480 points of your list. I hope that was worth it for you. That seems pretty fun. But
a Librarian alone, if you max him, which I've never quite done, but if I like max mortal wounds on him in a turn, it's something like 14 or 15 if you like roll high and everything. Maybe probably more, I guess, if you get a super smite or whatever, but like, and you pay the CP for extra cast. But like my Mortal Wound Librarian has taken out like an entire Sanguinary Guard unit pretty much on his own. And, like most of a possessed, they definitely do insane mortal wounds. So
yeah,
at least that character does,
yeah,
for sure.
I've watched it pop 8 out of 10 Hearthguard. Wow. Something like that. It was 8, or it was a lot of them, and then a bunch of them ran away, and whatever. They're great. Love the mortal wounds. Librarian. Speaking of which, getting back to your list, back to the HQs, you have a Mortal Wounds Librarian. I think we just talked a whole lot about him. I think we're all used to this. We know what he has. He has Psychic Epitome. You gave him Foretelling of Locust. I assume that's because you can't give him to Drago, and you're not gonna not take. Oh, no, actually, you took the gem, huh? On your Grandmaster.
I put the gem on the Grandmaster, which was kind of. I guess I can jump into that. This was the first time I ever used the gem, period. And I was just like looking at my points, and I felt like I could make just this few extra points work. Instead of giving my other Dreadknight a weapon, basically was like the decision. Or melee weapon, I mean. And the gem I found for most of my games, which one of my friends who I play with somewhat regularly plays like Necrons, or Imperial Knights, so that's part of this. But in general, I found Empiric Amplification to be maybe like actually the best power in our codex.
100%, yeah.
And it's really hard to get, like, there's so many things you want to spend CP on again, and like 3d6 to cast is pretty much our only way of like pseudo guaranteeing to get a cast off.
Yep.
And the only other one is the gem to get the +2. And so I gave it to him because often my Grandmaster is in like up in the front or off on like the side, but in the right position to cast it. And I can put him in a place where he can get shot if he hasn't been shot yet, and teleport.
Yep.
And I just don't want to spend it. I want to spend my CP on 3d6 cast on the Librarian to cast like 2, maybe 3 Mortal Wound powers. And so to more guarantee the Empiric Amplification, that was like the number 1 reason.
Yeah.
So the gem was really useful on him, actually. If I could give it to Drago for Gate and Empiric, I would. But
hell yeah, brother. I would too, man. Unfortunately, for those of you that don't know, named characters can't take those upgrades. So, wah wah. All right, so then we've already started to kind of talk about him, the Grandmaster and the Nemesis Dreadknight. This guy is a fucking beast. This dude like consistently gets his points back in like every game I ever play. He's got one of the coolest relics in the game, the Sigil of Exigence. Any kind of movement you can get in your enemy's turn is just bonkers. And I can't tell you how many times I've told my opponent about that when we're going over our list. I remind them at the start of the game, and then on like turn 2, they fire at him, and I'm just like, okay, yoink, there he goes.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, what have I done?
Most of the people I played with were like very conscious of it, and one guy was like, "Hey, if I shoot at him, say I'm going to shoot at him, just stop me when I do it because I don't
Nice.
mean to." He just
Nice.
told me like,
Yeah.
and so I told him like, right, he was like, "I'm going to shoot," and I was like, "Are you sure?" Because he can tell. He's like, "No, no, no, I don't mean to." But yeah, I found that to be like, and again, the pregame move on him getting an extra. It basically puts his first turn move up to 15 inches because of the 6 and then the 9, and you really can get in a place where you can get targets on like almost anything. You can even get charges sometimes. And yeah, the sigil
Yeah.
and I mean, he's just feels like probably one of those powerful things we can run in the codex.
Oh,
Honestly, if
100%.
it weren't
Yeah.
for sigil, I probably wouldn't run a Grandmaster Nemesis Dreadknight because I do think the Dreadknights can get shot off pretty easily, and not having armor of contempt and going straight up to 4 up invulnerable and just like and they
Yeah.
degrade like they're like armature. They're like die like armatures almost do practically for a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. And so I feel like the sigil is like necessary for him to be in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you want to keep him alive one more turn, usually people get Servant of the Throne
Yeah,
instead of the gem, and like that just keeps him annoying, like being
yeah,
annoying as hell for one more turn
yeah.
usually.
Everyone's
Yeah,
surprised when I didn't have servant. They're like, "Oh, and he has the 3 up." I was like, "No, I don't." And they're like, "Oh." I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't do it." But
yeah.
I think it's a very good thing to use. I just feel like I wanted the gem more and didn't have points.
All right. Sindri has another question. Um, I think Sindri asks this question every single Grey Knight stream. He wants to know swords or halberds. He sees one warding stave in the list, which I was going to bring up later as
Yeah.
well. What do you think? I assume the warding stave is probably because you just ran out of weapons.
Yeah, morning sabers I run out of weapons. Technically, I've had one time where I usually put that on the very backfield. Like some strikes are holding the backfield and doing purifying ritual or whatever, and the warding save can give you that 5 up invuln on like a turn when you really need it. I've only used it once, so it's probably not worth it, but it also doesn't like hurt. I think for that one unit. I think that a mix is what you want personally. I know like everyone has really strong opinions one or the other. I watched the one guy stream who has like all halberds. I
That
think
would be
that
Jose. That
yes,
man
yeah,
loves
Jose.
his halberds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have every game I've played, I've actually most of the time wanted more halberds actually, especially the interceptors. Like there's still a decent amount of Eldar of like
Sisters.
yeah, anything that's toughness 3, Harlequins, all that sort of stuff, like wounding on 2s just makes such a big difference. Um, but I still like a mix of swords because it sucks if you do run into like Blood Angels or just some Marine thing and they have Armor of Contempt and a 3 up save and like you're like all of a sudden on AP2 against Armor of Contempt, you're like, all right, they're still taking
Yeah.
4 ups. So I find a mixture, and I think that I like having the halberds, more halberds on like the more mobile units, so that I can get them. I directed like Chaos Guy cultists, and I got interceptors into his backfield and on his cultists, and just like massacred like 20 cultists or something because
Oh yeah. Cultists
you
just
know
cultists just fold, man. Like if
yeah,
you look at
and the
them
wounding on
funny.
twos made like a lot of difference. I feel like so. Anyways, I think a mix is what you want, and I like having some dedicated halberd units to go after that. And I like my paladin brick is like all swords except for I would do more hammers if I had the points, but like at least one hammer because they're usually fighting the tougher opponents, the thing that they're going to send into like either the middle or that contested objective, and the AP extra AP makes a bigger difference there. I think
Nice,
so.
nice.
That's my feelings.
Modeling tip for all of you out there, by the way. If you are running out of halberds, you can take the warding stave, cut off the head of it, and cut off the bottom of a falchion, glue that on top. You have a halberd. just like that.
That's
Because
true.
it's not like anybody's running the falchions either.
Yeah. I've magnetized like almost all my, like 80% of my weapons, and the backpacks, which was overkill, it turned out. But I didn't, when I was building my army, I didn't know which weapon I'd want, and I didn't know how many interceptors for strikes versus whatever. So I magnetized a lot of stuff, which has been a pain when moving things around the field, but
Yeah,
overall, I think it's
my
worth it.
my like entire Deathwatch army is all magnetized just because there's too many war gear options. I'd go insane. But what you're also doing is you're future proofing. Because in 10th, maybe falchions are dope, and I've turned all of mine into halberds. So you know.
I feel like I've got a good setup where like if interceptors get way worse, I can convert, and if whichever weapon gets better, I can mostly switch over.
Awesome. Sweet. So then we have Caldor Drago. We're not even through your HQs yet. I love Caldor because obviously, Aura reroll ones to hit. He can give one unit reroll all hits. And then he's a mini librarian. He's a librarian. He casts 2. He knows 3. You have an interesting tech choice here too, where one of the powers that you picked. I mean, obviously you got Gate and you have Empiric Amplification. But you have Ghostly Bonds on him, which I think the only other person I can remember running Ghostly Bonds repeatedly is Stuart Traynor down in Australia. So why Ghostly Bonds?
This was I tried it out in one practice game, and I ended up finding it pretty strong. I felt like the main option is Sanctuary. I feel like it's the most common thing.
Yep.
Or he also has Warp Shaping if you like want to put a different that on. If you don't want to have someone else for that. And I found that with Armor Contempt and often like Armored Resilience to my Paladins or whatever, Sanctuary felt really silly most of the time to give a 4 vulnerable to a squad that has a basically 1-up save or whatever. So I tried the Ghostly Bonds, and I loved it. I didn't use it as much as I wanted to, but honestly, one game I did it, my first game actually, the whole tournament I did against the guy's big knight who was going to go to the middle and do their action that gets him 5 points. And he couldn't move. Like I went first, I got in range. I increased the range of the cast, and I made him half move, and he couldn't get to the middle anymore.
Wow.
And so with that power. So I find it really good, and I think there's a lot more use for it than even I used it. There's a lot of times where you take, and because it also works on the other big reason I picked it is some chaos lists have that stratagem where they can add however much to their move instead of advancing. They auto add 6 or whatever, but this still has that. Like this has the whole thing. So I think it can make a big difference in a lot of games. So and Drago, like oftentimes I'm casting. If I'm there's opponents where I really want Empiric Amplification against, and then there's other things where it's like doesn't really help me against. I'd rather just have them slowed down. I'm almost always casting Gate, probably once with him every turn because it's just so useful. But the second cast, I feel like flips flops between those based on where I'm at.
So someone asked in chat, it was Garrett. He asked, what does Ghostly Bonds do? It is Warp Charge 5, so easy to cast. It's a range of 18. It does have to be visible, which is the only real downside, but 18 inches, awesome range. And until the start of your next psychic phase, you have that unit's move characteristic. So if you're fighting, I don't know, let's say Aeldari bikes that move like 22 in a Hail of Doom list because they advance and don't care. Now they're only moving 11, which is still a lot of movement, but is considerably less than that player wants them to have. That's for sure. And then if you do it to, Death Guard Terminators, they might as well not even move that turn because they're going to move like 2 inches or something. 3, I guess. I assume you round up, but
I think with inches, luckily, you can probably technically have it. I guess it didn't come up. We didn't ask it, but
I guess you could have it to like 1/2 of an inch.
2.5, but yeah.
That's true. That's true.
There's a lot of big things that worked. I mean, the Silent King, I did it too, and him going from like his whatever 9 or 10-inch movement down to half, like he can't get to the thing he needs to get to charge or whatever. It makes a big difference on some things. So
well, I mean, in this game we consider 5 slow. So if you go from 10 to 5, you've gone from what we consider fast to what we consider slow. So yes. Like it's a
exactly.
great like tech choice. I love it. And it's just one of those things where I don't think I'm skilled enough yet to really understand like when it will be very, very good. But I love the idea. So then we have troops. We have 3 strike squads because, of course, we brought a
Yeah.
battalion. You got to put in your strikes. Like I think we already went over the real big tech piece in here. You have 1 warding save, and then we went into your combination of like swords and halberds and all of that. So I don't know if we
Yeah.
want to spend a whole lot more time talking about this. Strikes are great.
Yeah. I wish we had a
Like
cheaper psychic thing. I think my only point I'd make is I know a lot of people run servitors. I bought some. I haven't played with them yet, but I feel like I use purifying ritual, and I know a lot of people do other psychic things like interrogation or whatever. But I find purifying ritual to be like consistently one of my best secondaries. And that's the thing is like the servitors. That's I always have a strike squad that had like if servitors could cast purifying ritual, I'd run like a
as many
shitload
as
of
you
them.
could.
But the thing is like I still have to leave a strike squad back, or some
Yeah.
people have a tech ring back, or whatever it is. I think I wish I could run like a smaller, cheaper psychic unit to like do that, but it ends up being the striking marines, and that's where
Yeah.
that stab can sometimes come to use. They're getting shot from like way downstream or something deep strikes to shoot them or whatever.
Yeah, that is our cheapest psychic casting unit. So, I mean, which
You can't really get better.
at 22 points a model, honestly, they are really good. The only reason I don't think you see like just strike squad spam lists is just because they have no inherent like invul or -1 damage or anything like that. If you could do that, I could see people like running just like 60 strikes.
I want if psi weapons would get good for the infantry, that'd be my thing. If like psi cannons and silencers
Oh,
like you
yeah,
put on,
I see what you mean now.
I would love that. That would like
Yeah,
change my list. But
it's the heavy, like,
yeah,
for me, it's the heavy keyword that makes it so bad.
they're like
But
0 AP practically. They're like 1 AP or something.
yeah,
It's like
I
so
mean
painful.
that's like a thing for Grey Knights though. In ninth, like we got, I think so. The only way you can get anything ground pounding with a Melta or a Plasma that I can think of off the top of my head is Dreadnoughts, and unfortunately, Dreadnoughts just evaporate in this meta. Like
And I don't
it
want like 1
sucks,
or
but
2
it's true.
shots of like good like that's why like if it's like you're way better just to take a psi cannon and spend the CP to like do an extra AP or whatever than
Yeah.
on a Dreadknight in my mind. But yeah,
Well, that's why the uh, the Dread Knights stay around in the meta is
yeah,
because that 4-up invul, yeah, it's swingy, but hey, man, like the guns on it are
stay
good.
confirmed. Yeah, definitely had stuff lived that shouldn't have.
Absolutely, yeah. Into your elites, you have a Brotherhood Apothecary. You have Unyielding Anvil. He is your warp shaping um
Yeah,
bunny, I guess. I don't know.
yeah,
Action monkey in a way.
yeah.
So which you probably what ties do you even use? You probably start in Shadows if you're going second, and then you
If I'm
switch
going
to
second, probably.
Convergence.
I was in
Right.
Tide Convergence. Well, I went first a lot. I don't even remember the exactly. It was probably like 4 out of 6 or 5 out of 6 games I went first. I think I got lucky in that sense. Some games I actually wanted to go second, but most I actually did want to go first. And I started in Tide Convergence. I probably did warp shaping 1 time in the whole tournament. So
Beautiful.
I think
But that's the
I
thing, like you can't leave that power at home. I've seen some
yeah
lists, like not in like tournament winning lists, but in like really respectable lists, people just leave it at home.
yeah
And they're like, I'm
Those-
gonna start in Convergence.
yeah.
I'm gonna hide if I'm going second.
I kind of want to try Celerity more. Honestly, I've only used it twice ever, and I failed in this tournament. I had 2 times where I failed 6-inch charges with a reroll
No,
into critical things
no.
um,
Feels so bad.
I like exposed a unit being like there's no like the chances of failing this by the percentages are like super low. I got a CP to reroll, blah blah, failed it twice, and I'm just sitting there like with I left a whole 10-minute interceptor squad just like sitting there and just got obliterated the next turn. But
Oh no.
anyways, I think Celerity I want to try a little more. Also for that first turn, use it even if you go first, use Celerity to move up the field, and then and
Do
then
you
switch it over to Convergence.
do
That's
you
one thing I just haven't done, and I've been thinking about it. I want to use it more.
I feel like putting an elite army with so little defenses out that far on turn 1 is just going to get you rocked turn 2. Like, if you advance a whole lot, you're not shooting. I mean, maybe you're not in range to shoot anyway, but like...
Well, the nice thing is you can change in your psychic phase, right? So you can like move, do all the advancing in your movement phase, and then you switch to
You
convergence. So
son
your
of a
Dreadknight
bitch.
still
I
shooting.
never
But that's the
put
thing.
that
I've only done
together.
it once. I want to do it more. Or you could switch to shadows, or whatever, you know. But I found tides of convergence, the mortal wounds and the range on the psi weapons is like 9. I mean, I'm most of the time shooting at 30-inch range or 29-inch range with my Dreadknights as it is. So like,
Yeah, I got you.
it's huge.
That's, man, I can honestly tell you right now, look you in the eyes and say I never thought about that. Start in celerity, do all your advancing, get out onto the midfield objective with your paladins or whatever, you know, like slap armored resilience on him, change to convergence, worry about it later. Wow.
Yeah, so that's the thing I want to do more, but I've run mostly, like my main thing that's slow is those paladins, and that's like the main reason I want to advance more is them.
So that's an excellent transition, my friend. Oh, I guess we should probably talk about the fact that your Brotherhood Apothecary has Unyielding Anvil. I assume that is because he runs around with the Paladins, the 7-man Paladin brick, which makes a lot of sense. Those are very expensive models. Probably the only thing in the whole game in the Grey Knights army that I would spend 1 CP to resurrect a model is a Paladin. Because we don't get the sweet upgrade for the Apothecary that makes that free.
The amount of games where I've sat there and I spent my CP because I had to, and then I knew I wouldn't have a CP to raise a Paladin, and I wanted to cry was like a third of my games. Yeah, I can talk about them both together, but the Apothecary, I feel like if you're gonna run a big brick, when I first started playing, I ran 2 3-man Paladins and used deep strike or teleport strike and brought them in or moved them around, and I did like the extra mobility of kind of splitting that unit up, but as soon as you're running the Apothecary, I think you want as big of a brick to like stay alive and soak up stuff as possible. If I could run another 2 Paladins points wise, I would. And I feel like Unyielding, I have a blob that's like the Paladins, Drago, Librarian, and Apothecary generally all go the same way. I had a few games, I'd say like a third of my games or fourth of my games, they had to split up for various reasons, but most of the time it was like that group either goes to that middle spot if it's against an opponent I can hold it against, or goes to the side that I need the biggest tank at. And then armor resilience them and cover, like they just like don't die. The biggest complaint I have is like failing armor resilience feels so shitty on your psychic turn, and like CP re-rolling that feels pretty terrible unless you know you're about to get slammed. But
in my latest RTT, I went against Hail of Doom Eldari, and my Paladins kept getting armored resilience off, and finally he started purposefully trying to deny it. Because he's like, stop it, stop it, stop it. It's like, you're completely blunting my whole build. Stop it.
They took one of my opponents did a Turvagon fight on death into my Paladins because I charged her and just like murdered her. I got really lucky, failed a bunch of saves on the hammer, and took like 9 damage off of just the hammer. And that thing hits really hard, but I just like, he still only brought me to like, I think it was a 3 up or 4 up save with like armor resilience and AOC, and like you just save enough. I mean, the odds are you're gonna just keep him alive. I lost like 1.5 Paladins, I think, to like, you know, all these 1 million attacks he had and whatever damage. So makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, if they hit you
Purifying Flame on them is the last thing I'll point. I went between that and like Imperial Castigation or something.
Okay.
Or even Hammer Hand I found with the swords. And I really like Hammer Hand on the Paladins when I need it, but I'd say 9 times out of 10 I'm going to cast Armor Resilience, and the one time I don't, it's because like I want to get them out of melee, or I want to drop something that's like really hard. And the Purifying Flame, being able to cast on a 5 and do those 3 mortal wounds, I've taken them out of combat and then be able to charge another thing that same turn because of that spell. So that's why I have that on there.
Do you run I think you already mentioned this, and I'm really sorry, but is the Libby running with Drago and the Apothecary and the Paladins as well?
Most games are all together.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
but then sometimes I'll gate like the Libby away to do something, or whatever it is.
Sure.
But yeah,
Okay.
generally it's like a blob of 3 characters,
Yeah.
all the paladins, and often there's like a squad of strikes or interceptors like also following to help hold the objective as like
Yeah.
if they move forward or they slide off or whatever.
I have to point out just real quick, the Mortal Wounds Libby is like one of the scariest anti-counter charge units in the game.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's like, okay, you charge my brick of like hard to kill paladins. Um, if it's a tough enough opponent, I might even pay the 2 or 3 CP for true silver armor if I need them to stay alive. You kill a paladin or two, and then you get schwacked with 12 mortal wounds on my next psychic phase, and whatever you just sent my way is dead.
Yeah.
You know, like that is and so when you keep him with the paladins and you just kind of like keep him like surrounded, what are you supposed to do about it, right? Like,
yeah, it's really hard.
good.
It also gets me a lot of denies forward, and I had a Harlequins player one time charge like my paladins with boats to like tie them up, and like on 2 different charge them on 2 different sides so that they couldn't all hit one, and like I didn't kill either boat on the like swing back, and then he's like in his mind he's like, I'm safe, like I'll be fine till his next melee phase. But like my psychic phase came around and my librarian killed one boat and like someone else like mortal wounded the other. Like I destroyed both boats and then all of his troops were there and then they just got storm bolted like completely to death.
Oh
And he's
man,
like,
yeah.
I forgot about that. And I was like, yeah. So the librarian, a lot of people start him in Deep Strike, and I met tons of people who I played against who are like, oh, I just always start mine in Deep Strike, and I like him on the field and like with them because there's a lot of times where even on turn 1 you can like increase his range and you can Vortex of Doom some big clump, from like 18 inches away or whatever, and I find that really good.
I've been running Ethereal Castigation on my Paladins lately, and I found that I don't use it. It's not that I don't know I don't have it. It's not like I'm like forgetting. It's just like you said, you're casting Armor Resilience 9 times out of 10 anyway. Don't want to spend 1 CP to have them cast another power. And Ethereal Castigations means they can't charge, and they can't shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they do shoot, but you're
really before they move again, so they're probably in like not the best shooting.
And it's like, but you're bringing it for the double move. Like let's be honest here, right? So
I think it's bad, but I do think that like 9 times out of 10 you're doing Armor Resilience, and usually wherever my paladins are going, like the opponent's gonna come at me, like it's gonna happen. There's a couple times where I gated them just forward like 6 inches to get closer to where I needed them to be, but most of the time I need a decent advance on turns 1 or 2, and then they're usually where they need to be.
Nice. Yeah, and I love the tech piece of Nemesis Hammer.
Yeah, I want more. I want like 2 in the squad or 3, but it costs points.
I was gonna do that, but I dropped the hammer and I took Prestige Paralysis to turn off Overwatch on 1 unit because like I've lost Grandmaster Dreadnoughts like charging into say a kill rig, and they have that crazy good flamer on that thing, which like does 3 or 4 damage or something, and hits you 8 times. It's like, oh. So I found like there's, or my buddy Levi, who might be in this chat right now, like, he runs a what's the big scorpion for his Iron Warriors.
I don't know what it's called. Not Talos.
The brass scorpion, and you do not want to get overwatched by that thing. Just no, it's the worst. So I found that for me, or like Imp Knights. No, you don't get to shoot. Do not get to shoot.
Yeah. Imperial Knights are one I think it's probably worth it some of the time. I usually try to charge like through a wall or something. But there's definitely some hard overwatches in the game for sure right now.
So I love this idea of these little tech pieces that you've got that you've clearly thought out, like when you're going to use them and why, and it's great. And the other thing that's really cool about the demon hammers on the paladins is they have a weapon skill of 2.
Yeah.
So they're hitting on 3s, and with Drago
Drago's
rerolls.
usually with them. So they're usually around some rerolls. So
which is so even rerolling or even hitting on threes, rerolling ones is just really, really good.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you already kind of answered one of the questions I was going to ask you about your interceptors. It sounds like you run one block of 10 some of the time, or do you
Some of
run
the
block
time.
of 10 all the time? Okay.
I'd say it depends on the mission. Like 6 objective missions or things I know I'm gonna need to split stuff up a lot. Or if I'm running banners and I'm gonna want extra things to do actions, like one unit to wave banners and one to purify, whatever, I'll often split them up. I think first there's a couple matchups where if I think I can get an alpha strike with the pregame move. I played against a Yunari player and we were on the mission that has like the deployment zones. There's like the circle in the middle and then the deployment zone. So like
Oh,
they're really close to each other.
yeah. Isn't that like
No.
conversion or something like that? I know
No.
exactly the one that you're talking about. Here, hold on. Let's ask Wahapedia. I hear
Yeah.
they know.
It's
I
I
hear
could
they
I
know
could
what they're
pull the
doing.
tournament ones. It would have the point is like he was like I knew I could have a really close deployment zone and
It is
also
called
storm
conversion.
bolters.
Yeah.
Is it conversion?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, it was conversion. And I know Stormbolter is very effective in him too. So having a 10-man squad that on turn 1 I can like give full rerolls and send off like basically 18 inches away is their move on turn 1 with the pregame move, and then they're charging whatever. So those are the times that I kept like that one. I
Yeah.
pregame move. I left one guy in range of Drago. Command gave him the rerolls, and then moved the squad to 12. And he had tried to redeploy back, but he could only redeploy 3 units, and he deployed a lot of stuff forward. And so they shot off an entire ranger unit and like half a troop squad, and then charged a squad of bikes and killed them. And that was all on turn 1. And that 10-man squad. So that's the times I do it. But I'd say most often I'd probably combat squad like 3/4 of the time.
That's actually really interesting. I like that. Like the Vanguard aggression, being able to give that move to another core unit, and that, of course, interceptors are core. Of course, they are. So that's really neat because my current list, I'm using rhinos to kind of do that a little bit, so I can move 15.
A rhino.
Yeah.
I want one bad.
Yeah.
That extra 3 inches I think is important for sure.
Yeah.
But
It's been really
like
fun.
the move gives him like another 3 inches on top of that, which I think is meaningful for sure. There's a lot of missions, like the biggest distance is 24 between 2 table sides. So if people are deploying forward, like you have a 6-inch charge on turn 1 if you go first. And so those are the times where I feel like that 10-man can make a big
which is nar. And like into going back slightly to that question that we had about like all those layered defenses, right? So one of the things that feels really bad about Grey Knights is when you go second, like you don't have any of your defensive powers up yet. Like you have none of that stuff. Well, the same thing's true of these other groups, right? Like, so if they're Iron Warriors or whatever, and they need a chant or, they need a psychic power to go off to get those defensive, if they have put their Terminators up really like that, and you can get 10 Interceptors and a Grandmaster in on them and just schwack 550 points of their lists, and you throw away the 10 Interceptors, like you're still way up. Like they have built their entire army's playstyle around that 10-man brick, and you just schwacked it. And that's that's the game at the beginning of turn 1. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and they usually have to dedicate, like they then have to direct stuff to kill that. Like they have to move stuff over that, like wherever you went. Maybe it's not even where you want your rest of your army to be, but like they have to deal with that. It's a big group and it's hard to kill. Especially if you're charging into them, you're often getting into some cover or whatever. It's hard to take 10-man interceptor squad down that easily. The one game I tried that and I failed to charge with we even spending the CP on the reroll, and then I was like, well, that sucks. But I actually gave him some movement I maybe didn't want to. But again, you got to learn these lessons, like when to do it, when not, and where. Yeah. And but that's, I think, one of the powers of the Blades of Victory.
Sindri's asked another question.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get into this a lot because JP did actually fight demons. Yeah. How do you deal with Zeech Flamers? Like, the entire feels like the entire Demons Codex right now is being propped up by their insanely cheap flamers. So can
Yeah.
you explain how you deal with
Yeah.
them?
So I've only played Demons once, and it was that one time, and he was a very good player. I think I got lucky again. This was the first day, and this was a 6 objective mission that like you only have to control 2 to get 8, rather than the like 3 for 8 and then more.
Yeah.
So it's and he was playing the list. It has 3 sets of flamers, but it has a ton of like demonettes and like it does not. It had Abaddon. It didn't have the big demons,
Oh, okay.
which I think seemed easier to me in some ways because like the demonettes will murder stuff when they get into it, but if I can get to like shooting it or
Right.
whatever,
Because they're all T3
um,
as well, right?
yeah, most of the stuff is T3. So I found that like the one thing that sucks is like the flamers are the 3-up demonic save, and even they have like I think a 4-up demonic save or something to shooting. Like
Yeah.
I with that 10-man squad of interceptors, I was trying to charge into like his most forward squad and shoot his flamers. This was like I did that pregame move, and I shot all 10 interceptors, or like 8 of them that could see them, into a squad of flamers with rerolls, and I did 1 wound with poor rolling on my part, and he made almost all of his 3-up save. He failed 1 3-up save out of like
Oh,
10,
yeah.
and I was like, wow, I really thought I'd kill like one flamer at least,
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, I think with that army, I made a concerted effort to get interceptors in positions to charge through walls in the flamer. So I did a lot of charging through cover and not shooting, like just foregoing shooting so that I could make sure and charge them. And then I put my Dreadknights kind of when he brought his flamers forward to try to get a lot of damage in. I put the Dreadknights forward, and I also made sure this is something I used multiple times during the tournament that I hadn't used a ton before, and I think is really good is the 3d6 deny a power. Because they have the psychic power to make him +1 to wound or whatever on the flamers, and so I just saved my CP and spent 1 CP on and 3d6 take the highest 2 +1 to deny, and I was like, that's the power
Yeah.
we're stopping. And so he put his flamers actually into the Dreadknights because that's what was like in front of him, and he couldn't get to my other stuff at the time. And so I think I don't know. And I guess my keys is like charging through cover, denying the power to give them the +1 to wound is huge. And then I think they're not as bad. Like mortal wounds still kill them. I also did a decent amount of that. And like the Grey Knights, just like with AOC, the -2 AP, it's not that like if you have paladins, like they're not killing paladins
No.
in cover, especially.
Yeah. I wanted
And
to
so
point out as well that, we have Tide of Banishment,
yeah,
and rerolling ones to hit and ones to wound is a literal 15% efficiency increase throughout your entire army. You just
yeah,
came to that game with 2,250 points effectively.
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
came
I
with
think that
so much more than they did. So you
yeah,
have like Tide of Banishment is nuts.
yeah. I'm way more scared of the like Be'lakor Bloodthirster, which I haven't played against, but just watching like like not being able to like getting minuses to hit against Be'lakor, and then like the Bloodthirster face cap. If he gets into you before you've done enough wounds and like is healing off of killing you, like that scares me. The Flamers are really strong, but I just think our stuff is pretty tough. And as you said, the Tide of Banishment, and we can just kill that stuff on the kickback pretty easily. Their movement is really strong though. Being able to like they move at 12 and advance and they can shoot afterwards, like that is strong.
And they fly.
Yeah.
Let's
Why
not
not?
forget that they fly. Yeah. So like you were saying, they're strength 5 flamers. So firing into a Dreadknight, if you stop the +1 to wound power, they're only wounding on 5s. It's only
Yeah.
1 damage. And it's
Yeah.
only -2. So yeah, you're bringing your Dreadknight down to the 4-up invul because it doesn't get AOC, but that's still like you're reducing them to wounding 1/3 of their hits, and then
Yeah.
like you're saving half on average. So yeah, you can
Yeah.
you can
I,
survive.
I feel like I was able to charge a group through a wall and destroy like almost all of it. And another one I shot down just slowly with side cannons and silencers from the 30-inch range. Um, and so there was really just one squad that fully came in and tried to go for it, and it wasn't enough.
Nice. Yeah, because they only have a 6-up in melee, right?
Yeah, 5-up or 6-up in melee, something like that. Like
Yeah.
they die, well, especially against 2 damage weapons. They're like every and mortals they die pretty fast.
Yeah. Very cool. So And it's just that. I had never thought about running a 10 mana of interceptors that way. I think you really make it work by like bringing blades of victory. Like you clearly thought that all the way through, which is neat. And last but not least, to finish out the list, it's been almost an hour already. You have
One Dreadknight.
a Dreadknight.
Yeah.
It's only got the fists. I ran a bunch with fists this last RTT. I didn't realize their strength 12 minus 3 or 3 AP.
Yeah, the fists are pretty good. Like, I honestly think the Dreadknights don't. I mean, I would like if they were free, I'd run swords, obviously, but whatever.
Yeah.
But like the fists are pretty good. I definitely want to run a hammer on the like normal Dreadknights. I feel like with the -1 to hit and getting degraded and whatever. Well, actually, the weapon skill doesn't grade, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think that they're there for their side cannon silencer, and like if they get in a charge range, their fists still do work. So.
Yeah.
I just think that I ran 3 Dreadknights previously, and I've like kept cutting it down and adding interceptors and adding paladins because I find that the Dreadknights just die easier than I want. I mean, they have a 2-up and a 4-up, and they're tough. But if they were toughness even 7, I think would make a significant difference. But toughness 6,
you got to be
a ton of stuff that wounds them. They just die.
I think if they got AOC, I don't think it would be that bad. Honestly, I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be world altering, but it would keep them around the table. You know, like another turn. Yeah. Because I agree with you. If anybody focuses down a Dreadknight, it's going to die unless you just roll godly saves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, of course, if you roll godly saves against anything, you're gonna survive, right? So it doesn't matter. But yeah.
I want it for the shooting because otherwise we have none. Really, we have like no long range good shooting. But yeah, AP2 like Knights, Helverins or whatever, they take you straight to your 4-up, and they're like 3 damage a pop on any wound that goes through. It's like you can 1 Helverin can like practically drop a Dreadknight, and 2, it's like you're instantly down your bottom bracket or you're dead. And they're big and hard to hide.
And they have like a what, 48 or 60-inch range on those Helverin autocannons?
They're like the whole table.
I think
60-inch, I think. Is
I think it's that. It's just like if I can see you, I can hit you. Like I'm not even gonna measure it.
Exactly. So I don't know. I like the Dreadknights, but I'm only running 1, and I would consider running none if I didn't feel like that extra little shooting makes a big difference in a few matchups.
Do you feel like you really need the teleporter on it? Is that just because they do have teleport strike inbound, like built in, so you can deep strike it anyway. But
I think there's a lot of games where like you get to this point where you need points at the end, and like you might not be in a range or even have some Drago with gate around or something, or you fail the warp charge 7 is like a fucking trap. You're like fail that way more than half the time. I feel like
it's true.
And just being able to know that like if I have 2 CP, I can get this guy all the way over to that other objective I need, or I can like also the fall back and shoot stratagem.
Yes. Fall back, shoot, and charge.
Yeah. I use that
real good
every game probably at least once between the interceptors or them. And so I think that like I think the teleport is worth the 10 points. I feel like I would run it. If I had like 3 Dreadknights, I might only run it on 2 or something, whatever. But I think it's really key.
Yeah. And as Garrett just pointed out, a 7 is a 48% chance without any modifier. And we lost our +1 to cast when we got our 9th ed book, so
just want like Drago at least as the grand fucking master who comes through the warp all the time to have like a plus. Just like can't he have a +1 to cast as the most powerful psyker on like the Grey Knight army? I don't know.
Can I just point out that Boldus, the Grandmaster that leads the Psychic Brotherhood of the Psychic chapter of like who has pulled planets out of the warp with his brain powers, has no +1 to cast. But Ahriman has what, +2 or +3 or something?
Yeah.
Like
I mean, like every time I play
all that dude
like,
has done is consistently let down his chapter. He gets like +2 to cast.
Yes. Every time I play against like Eldar or something, and like, oh, and after I cast this on 8-up, you can't deny it, and I can get a +2 to cast, and I'm like, all right, well, why am I so bad at psyching? I don't know.
Yeah, like, and their Farseers just don't perils.
Yeah, they just don't perils.
Yeah.
And I perils minimum like 3 times a game, at least.
Nice. I have blown up paladins by failing my armored resilience. That feels great. And then every single save on your field of pain, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
because of 45-point model for nothing. Hooray. All right. Okay. Unless anybody else has any list questions, we're gonna get right into JP's matchups. There are 6 of them, so if anybody wants to hear anything specific, ask, because we got about 10 to 15 minutes for each of these total. So we're gonna go with your first game. It was Imperial Knights. You schwacked this kid. It was 100 to 56 by my research. I've never fought the new Imperial Knights. I fought them in their 8th Ed Codex, and that wasn't bad because I had my 9th Ed Codex. So what's it like now? I hear it's way harder.
I think it's way harder. I think the biggest thing, again, I got there, like you talked about how having if you go first, the opponent doesn't have their turn 1 buffs. And they're like the epitome in my mind of turn 1 buffs, because they give out these abilities to all their little dudes. And the biggest thing of those abilities is that they give -1 damage, to half of their guys. I don't know. I don't remember the exact numbers, but they just give -1 damage. So like your side cannons, your nemesis weapons, like everything just becomes useless.
Mm-hmm.
So one
it's
was
like
a 6
fighting
objective
Death
map.
Guard.
Yeah, as a 6 objective map, I did the pregame move, and I got to go first. So I got like in position. I got banners up a bunch. I was able to purify a bunch, and I put all my stuff in range to like, I think I dropped 2 or 1.5 at least, or 2 armatures on like turn 1 just with side cannon shooting and stuff, because I'm Pyrrhic amplification and he didn't have any buffs up yet. So I was doing, 3 damage a shot with the side cannon and 2 with the silencers. And this is the guy that I did the half move on his big knight, so he didn't get to the middle, he couldn't get in position to shoot, and he couldn't get position to. And Drago's, was character protected, but was out sitting there, so I just like left him there, character protected, and like cast his powers. And so between him and the librarian and the side cannon stuff, I think going first on that matchup was huge, because once he gets his buffs up, I took it way harder to kill like most of the other stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually it's really hard for him to control enough objectives after he loses a few guys. And the last thing I do is I'd say I play my other friend who plays Knights a few times, and Interceptors don't kill the Armigers very well, but you tie up the Helverins, I like base and surround them, and they don't do jack in melee, but they can shoot into melee. So like you get on them and they're shooting at -1, and then you slowly take them down.
Can't they? Do the little knights have the rule that allows them to fall back over models, or is that only the big knights?
The big Titanic
Okay,
knights.
Okay. Good to know.
So I ended up like I sent 3 5-man interceptor squads into 2 Helverins, and they still didn't die for like 2 turns, but they didn't shoot anything else, and they just sat there stuck with my interceptors as my interceptors slowly like killed them off.
Just sitting out there, just like
knees. I want hammerhand on interceptors so bad. I want hammerhand so bad. But you're wounding on 5s with halberds with anything. So like it's just that took I think, but tying the Helverins, I think murder even with AOC, like they're only -2, so it's on 4-ups, but every failed 4-up is a dead Paladin. So like I think it's really critical to tie up the Helverins. And so he moved them into position to shoot my Dreadknights, because I purposely put my Dreadknights in a place that like he needed to come forward, and then the Interceptors were in range and jumped over and did the work. So it was a very nice guy. He's a really cool guy here. And yeah, we had a good game, but I definitely got first turn helped a ton.
Man, when I played Knights recently, as soon as he learned that Imperial amplification does +1 damage, he's like, oh no, I'm doing everything I can. Like, he's spending like CP to reroll psychic tests and stuff. He's like, no, go away. Yeah,
it makes a huge difference.
Oh.
And the sigil on the Grandmaster, like I put him right out in front of him, killed that Armiger, and I was like, you gonna shoot him or are you gonna like ignore him? And he eventually shot him, and then I got to go all the way to like the far corner of the board where you only had one guy, and we like took that corner. So
yeah, that's one thing that's really fun as Grey Knights when you're playing into Knights, is like you get to use all of your deep strike shenanigans. They don't have enough models to stop you.
Yeah,
like, and if they want to keep 3 of their little knights on their side of the board to screen you out, like, fine, stay over there. I don't want you over here anyway. You know, that's amazing.
100%.
Damned Legion is thanking you, or congratulating you on your win, JP.
You. It was a lot of luck, but it was really fun, and I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah. And then
And I
we
want
had
Grey Knights to do well, so we need Grey Knights to keep playing.
yes, keep going. All right. And then you had Eldari, which you won again. Obviously, I mean, you won all of these. I don't think that's surprising for anybody because you came in first. But it was 78 to 63, so a considerably tighter match than the last one.
This was Ynnari specifically, and this I find D cannons to be like the bane of my existence. This guy was another really nice guy, really good player. This is the one where I set my 10 interceptors with a pregame move. They basically took out like 2.5 units on turn 1, and I took out another group of Howling Banshees that like with the side cannon range on the convergence, and that like definitely set the game up. But it was still really tight because Harlequin troops do damage, and the other thing is I knew he could teleport his Incarn when I killed his stuff. So at the end of the fight phase, I killed those bikes, and I had my Grandmaster in that general direction, but my Grandmaster was pretty far away. I was like, he's safe, and he hasn't been shot at yet. Well, he teleported his Incarn, and I forgot kind of that the Incarn can fly, as well as like has such insane move, and Incarn flew right over my guys, and he made like the 10-inch charge on my Grandmaster and murdered him on his turn 1. My Grandmaster literally shot like one thing and then died. So that game, I think if I think of it, I'd position my Grandmaster like just an inch or two back out of like the range of that possibility on turn 1, I think it would have been a much easier game. But it did also put his Incarn, which is his most powerful unit, stuck there. And the next turn, I just shot everything at it first with like Storm Bolters. And I mean, it's just got a 4-up or 3-up normal and a 4-up invuln. Like, and it halves damage, but like Storm Bolters don't care about having damage. So like, I killed it on turn. So like we kind of traded our strongest units, and then the D cannons are still like the D cannons kill so many Marines and Paladins.
Can you tell me again what the profile of the D cannon is? Because the D cannon and the D scythe are two very different things, right?
Yeah, the D cannons they like squads of 3, and they can fire indirectly. And they have I think they're like D3 shots each. Strength like a bunch, 8 maybe 9, AP -4, and they're like D3 damage each, or D3 +1 or something like absurd. So like, and a lot of Eldar have ways of giving them +1 to hit or like re-rolling or something.
Yeah.
And so even though they're hitting on
guidance
4s
and all that jazz.
yeah, even though they're hitting on 4s out of line of sight, now they're hitting back on 3s. And even if they hit on 4s, like they're wounding on 2s on any infantry I have. And every failed save for me is, I mean, it's AP4, so the only thing that really has a shot is like Armor Resilience Paladin. So those things do a lot of damage. But I teleported my Paladins forward with Gate, and then got a 9-inch charge off on them, and that made a big difference. And I was able to take his like home objective. So it was a really tight match. But that was the conversion one where we started close, and there was a lot. It was a very bloody fight. But I also stopped him as secondaries because I targeted his Rangers early, and he has a scout. Secondary or whatever, where they do it in table corners, it's kind of like retrieve. I think they have to do it in so many places. But troops do it like most things, like right away. So I focus those down pretty hard too. So
so first of all, I want to point out that Fred Fortman is in the chat, and he just dropped a knowledge bomb. They are strength 12, AP4, damage D6 +2.
There you go.
So it's a minimum of 3 damage, which is why you lost Paladins to it.
That's why Paladins yeah. That's why he doesn't roll the damage most of the time unless I have a Feel No Pain with Apothecary, because it just kills whatever.
Or a Dreadknight, where he's really hoping for those 8s.
Yeah.
And then I did want to ask, and I usually do this before we get into the matchups, what kind of secondaries do you typically run? And I realize it changes based on the mission and the matchup and stuff, but what do you typically run?
I run a lot of Purifying Ritual. I think, I know, I feel like some people I like the other second ones, but I think Purifying Ritual is like, you can catch up a lot on points with it, or you can get ahead, and like either way it's good. Obviously it's tough. You do have to control the objective. which is a little bit different. But
They
again, with
did
the
they did nerf the best secondary in the game to make it
yeah,
still one of the best secondaries in the game.
yeah, I think it's fair now. But getting the apothecary unyielding anvil lets me. I basically know I can most of the time get 3 objectives at some like during most of the game, and sometimes and that 4 points is just huge. And then I usually try to like stack units on objectives, especially early, so that I have multiple tries for fails or denies. So that's I think purifying ritual is like my most common one, like 90% of my games. And then it depended a lot between on what I like no prisoners if they're going to give up a lot of points on that. Bring it down obviously versus like the knights and
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean,
The obvious
it's
ones there, and
yeah.
then I think the last one kind of is like engage banners behind enemy lines, like somewhere in that realm. I know have not played teleport assault yet because every time I line up in a matchup, I go my chance of like not killing this thing with a teleported unit feels like we just don't have good enough shooting. I feel like to consistently get it off. If you run a bunch of Dreadknights, I think you can like teleport
That's
and
yeah.
guarantee it. But with my army, like it's really hard for me to know that when I teleport, like I'm doing more melee damage than I am shooting, and charges out of teleport are 9-inch charges are mostly failed. So I think that one can be really good, and especially against like I'm sure against like some Eldar armies, some Guard armies, things that have like weak units that you can shoot off or kill off. Probably really good, but I found it just not consistent enough with like going against Knights or going against like Creations of Bile or whatever. Like
Ugh.
your chance of knowing you're going to kill that unit when you teleport is like pretty low. So
Yeah.
I hardly ever run that. So I think engage and behind are like I actually did engage decent on this one because a lot of times I skipped the middle and I went to the sides. I did this against that Eldar player. I kind of left the middle open and went to both corners.
Hmm.
And I think it was pretty easy for me to get 2, and then I could rack up the last points as needed. And banners on 6 objective maps, I feel like are almost guaranteed good points for Grey Knights.
Very cool.
So
Yeah. I agree with you though. Like teleport salt is kind of I run 4 total dreads in most of my lists just because I love the model, and then also it's our only available big shooting. So
yeah,
I've definitely done games where I cast gate and then I inch it forward like a quarter inch. I'm like, see, it moved, it teleported. Now I can shoot you and get 4 points, right? Like I've totally done that. So I do agree though. Like if you don't have like an empiric amplified, or you're like firing it, I don't know, let's say dire avengers out in the open or whatever,
yeah,
those die just like by the
sure.
droves. But yeah, like definitely didn't take teleport assault into knights, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm running a decent amount of interceptors, and most of the time I just want to move them in. Like I will move them to make a charge. Like they'll have less than a 9-inch charge just with their 12-inch move, and I just feel like I feel like teleport assault constrains you to like gate into the right thing to kill the thing that maybe you don't
Yeah.
want to be putting those resources into. So I just don't like it on paper, but I haven't played it much, so I can't really like say. I'm sure there's people that do really well with it. So I know it's a lot of
I
4 points a turn is great, but it's just you got to be able to get
it,
those lines on people.
it used to be that you could take 1 secondary from your book, and then teleport assault at the time was only 3 points if you actually pull it off, and everybody looked at that and purifying ritual, and they're like,
Yeah,
like I'm never gonna take teleport assault.
yeah,
And if they went back to where you could only take 1 from the book, I would never take teleport assault. Like
yeah.
it's not that good. Um, but
Well, if Gate of Infinity were less than a 7 for Warp Charge, I probably would take Teleport Assault more. If it was like a 5 or a 6, I just think I failed enough gates too that
yeah,
it would be really shitty on a turn where you need to get those 4 points and you fail the gate and like you don't have CP or you fail it again on the reroll and you're like, there goes 4 points that like I can't get now or whatever.
so viewers, correct me if I'm wrong, but gate used to be warp charge 6, not 7, but it used to be a 12-inch range, not 18. And the 18-inch range is like that extra 6 inches is huge.
Yeah,
So, I
definitely.
mean,
I,
take it, leave it.
I like the range on it. I think the Grey Knights, like, probably their biggest weakness right now is consistency with casting. And if they had a little more ways to, like, other than the one stratagem to do 3d6 roll, I think they'd be better off. But it is what it is. So
Yeah. I'm gonna look this up just because I'm curious, and you can do this now.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
very easy.
it used to be warp charge 6 and 12 inches.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it worked exactly the same. So they upped it by one warp charge, and they gave it 50% more range. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I failed my fair share of gates as well. Oh, and it was 6 with +1 to cast, so really it was a 5. Let's be fair there.
I would
That's also
personally,
true.
for my
Yeah.
games, I would take that. I would take that.
Yeah.
I would rather have the 12-inch range, but
I
that's
guess
I failed a lot, and so I
you've
just.
convinced me. All right. So, any other things you want to bring up about your Aeldari match, or was that?
I just think I think Unari are really good right now, and I think I got lucky on the map and like my position, and like I think we both positioned a little aggressively, and I got the roll off, and I think that makes a huge difference. But I would just say watch out for D cannons and know that when you kill stuff like that, that incarnate is going to be teleport all around, and so you got to position yourself and shoot in the right order. I think is like really key. If you shoot something else, you can the wrong time, you will totally f up your whole plans for that game.
Damned Legion is asking how you think the Grey Knight's psychic phase compares to the T Sun's psychic phase.
I mean, I think I've never played as T Suns, so but Cabal points being able to like know you're going to get something that you need to
Yeah.
feels like you can have more control over your game, but I think the Grey Knights can do a lot with their psychic phase that I mean, T Suns can teleport, T Suns can do good mortal wounds. I guess I don't know them well enough to know if there's huge differences, but I feel like I'm jealous of the T Sun's ability to be consistent with their psychic
I
phase.
I think when they were first doing the ninth ed, like they were like showing them off the previews. I think they started with T Suns and they talked about the like sorcery points and stuff. And I was thinking, oh man, that'll be so cool if Grey Knights get something like that. And then they didn't preview it for Grey Knights because they didn't
They
get
didn't
that.
have it.
Like I think
I mean,
fate dice, miracle dice, like sorcery points, all that stuff. I think that's fun that there's another resource that's specific for
yeah,
your army that lets you
yeah,
do what your army does better. And
yeah,
we got tides, and the tides are okay, but like they're not so good that I won't soup in something else, right? Like,
yeah.
but I think you're gonna be hard pressed to find a sisters player that's gonna soup in anything because they're gonna lose miracle dice, you know.
When I saw Kyle McCord's list with the guard, it like I was impressed and like that was a cool, really cool like idea, and he did well with it. I was like, that's awesome. But also, it like made me angry that like the Grey Knights, you don't even care that. Like I was like, yeah, I
No,
would do like you don't even lose that much, and you get all these tanks that do damage.
yeah,
I think Grey Knights need like
I,
they need a little adjustment to the casting consistency. So
I,
I think T Suns seems stronger in that level. Just knowing you can do your game plan, whatever your game plan is, whether it's I want to teleport over here and do this thing, or I want to like get these mortal wounds off. With Grey Knights, it's like my one thing I can do a turn is like I can pick the one thing, but I don't. I'm still rolling dice and I'm still hoping, and it still gets denied. Like pretty like I roll 3d6 on my librarian for purifying flame, and I get a total of like an 8, and they roll a 9, and it's like, well, that's like that's my damage this turn.
yeah.
And whereas Eldar or all these other things are like, oh, I rolled an 8, you can't deny it, and I spent a fate dice on this to know I'm gonna cast this at this like high level. So I definitely wish Grey Knights had a little bit of that myself.
uh, have you ever done a Grey Knight match or like mirror?
No, I was supposed to, and Quinn and
Okay.
I were talking about doing it, but I have not actually played it yet. I feel
Well,
like it would be annoying. You just
yeah.
be constantly denying and like
Let
5 up against mortal wounds.
yeah. Let me tell you, it is the most boring psychic phases because you have to try. It's such an integral part of your army that you have to try to cast, but you know they're just gonna deny everything with +1 to deny, and you like
Yeah.
it's just a whole bunch of you saying you're gonna cast this thing, them denying, and then 20 minutes later, nothing has happened on the whole board.
Yeah, I don't. I should do it once to know it, but I otherwise don't want to play that matchup. It just doesn't sound fun.
It's if you don't have a good sense of humor, it will drive you fucking bonkers.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Demons. Round 4. Or
we kind of talked a lot about it.
Round
honestly.
3 was Demons. Yeah.
Yeah, down round 3 was Demons. Really nice player, or nice guy, really good player again. He plays Tau before this, and I think he's like testing out some different Demons lists. And I got lucky again. I got first. I got all my banners up on my side, and like it's really hard for him to interact with those. And I just shot Interceptors forward to like disrupt his areas. I didn't take over his objectives other than one, but like even if you take that objective over, they still get 8 points on that map. So I didn't really disrupt him that much, other than I kept him busy on his side of the match, and I had some stuff in Deep Strike, so he kept stuff blocking me in the very back end to screen me out. And I think that all helped to the point that by the time he made his move, he failed his charge on Abaddon, even with the reroll into my Paladins, and that was like,
wow.
At that point was like. At that point, he was like, all right, like I can't do this. We both knew like I was ahead on points. I had good secondaries with Purifying Ritual going off on 3 objectives a turn and so on. That once that charge failed, like he basically was in a spot where he couldn't take me back. So I think again, charging the Flamers through cover, Storm Bolters against all the little demons were quite good. And then I think that the Purifying Ritual, the secondaries that Grey Knights have are quite good in those sorts of matchups. So, yeah.
Did you change up your secondaries at all, or did you stick with the game plan?
I did the one where you get killing demon units gets you points.
Yeah, I was gonna. That's why I was setting you up. I was setting you up because I knew what you were gonna say.
He gave up like the same on that though as like no prisoners, as like he didn't give up a ton of points on any of that stuff. I just picked the one that was like about. They're all about the same, so.
So 40k Dirtbags, who is Derek, by the way, and Derek, I'm not even going to try to attempt to say your last name until you actually tell me how it's pronounced. But Derek will be on my show Sunday morning. He recently took second at a very big GT that had the 11th best player in the world and the 30th best player in the world at it. He beat one of those guys, and he's asking, is the 10-point upgrade for Prestige Paralysis to the top Overwatch, is it worth it? We actually talked about this a little bit earlier in the interview. I think it is. I don't know if JP, if you've tried it out yet.
I haven't tried it out. I think there are probably matchups where it's worth it, but most of the time I feel like, at least with our terrain and everything, I can position myself in a way where like Overwatch. Like the one time I got blown up on Overwatch was Tau a couple tournaments ago on like turn, but that was a game where like I did it just to slow him down because it didn't, like at that point I had such a point lead on banners and Purifying Ritual, but he his cyclic Ion Blasters with re-rolling and with like exploding 6s and 5s, like I put a strike squad in first that only had like 2 guys left and he just like murdered them, and then I put in my Interceptors. So I think the Flamers, I think, aren't, the Overwatch is avoidable most of the time, and or you can deal with them with mortals or shooting, is what I found. So I mean honestly it's kind of nice. I feel like it's probably, if you have the points I would do it, but I don't think it's necessary, I guess, would be my opinion.
So I mean, I definitely think like it's gonna be Servant of the Throne on my Grandmaster is like number 1, followed very closely by Foretelling of Locust. I'm not gonna make a list probably without those 2.
Foretelling is like
the 2 things in it.
100%.
Oh, yeah, like Foretelling is very good because not only do you get like mind games against your opponent, if you're like me and you're actually fucking terrible at this game, it helps you make up for your deployment mistakes.
On a tournament.
I did. But like, I'm just saying, it helps me make up for my deployment mistakes. Where I'm like, oh, I thought they were gonna put all that stuff over on this side, and they actually put it on this side, and now I can like rearrange, or I can go ahead and like with player placed, I can go ahead and put like maybe only 1 big ruin in my corner, and I can deploy really aggressively, and then if I go second, I can pull all that stuff back and hide it, right? Yeah. So And then if I go first, I'm already on the line and I can just go. So yes, I definitely would never make a list without it, but I think prestige per, at least in my meta, we have big units, a lot of big units that shoot a lot. Like lots of there's lots of like double killer rig lists out there with orcs. You know, you have Imperial Knights out there. What's that? What's that gnarly? Is it the Telemon Dreadnought?
It's
Like,
the
yeah,
Custodes one,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot of good shooting, especially flamer Overwatch, like the Brass Scorpion. Um, I find it very useful. The one thing is the way that it's phrased is a little weird to me, where it's like, do you say you're going to charge that unit and then say you're going to turn off Overwatch, or do you wait for them to say they're going to declare Overwatch and then you get to like turn it off? That's the part that's a little weird to me. Is it retroactive or proactive?
Because I think it's at the start of your charge phase. So
Okay.
I think you have to declare it.
Got it. All right.
Before you charge. So I think I just haven't found Overwatch to be murdering me that much. But like if I have the points, I think it's definitely, I'm sure there's times it's really useful. I just think again with armor resilience and with terrain and things, you can position yourself in a way where most of the time I'm not getting slaughtered by Overwatch.
Gotcha. How much terrain do you have when you do player place? Like, is it the LVO style with like one big ruin in the middle that never moves, and then you each get like two ruins, or what?
Was that? No, it's actually, I thought it was a good amount, and then I've watched a lot of stream games, and I'm like, I think we're actually less than a lot because you basically get each player gets one kind of larger ruin that is complete LOS blocking at like all the floors, like you can be fully in it and you're covered. And then you get two small ruins that are obscuring, but you can step into them and then shoot in and out. And then one set of like crates, and then one forest or like dense cover type thing. And so I actually think it's quite a bit, like when I watch a lot of games, it's quite a bit less than when I see a lot of maps that are like two big ruins, like on each player side, and then some other little obscuring in the middle. Like it's definitely a lot less than that. So I think it's more, but with the player place, I think getting the place first makes a huge difference because especially on 5 objective maps, you have a lot of control over the middle of the board. So yeah, that's where I think that is another thing. I won the terrain, like I think a decent number of games, probably like half or more, maybe 4 out of 6, and that made a big difference too.
Yeah, player place is both cool and frustrating, just because it adds another layer of the meta that you have to like understand. You have to really understand deployment. You have to really understand your army, like what you want to do.
Yeah,
you know where your deployment line is, where those objectives are, how far you can move, and then where you want to put that. You know that line of sight blocking terrain or that forest or whatever, and that can make a big difference. big difference.
Huge differences for sure.
Yeah. So if you haven't practiced with player place terrain, Derek, you need to practice with player place, especially if you're going to LVO, because I guarantee you they're going to use player place there. Sure. All right, so I guess if you were tuning in late, we already went over the Demons matchup mostly back in like the list creation part of the video. So just like every one of my other interviews ever, this is jumping all over the place. And sorry, not sorry, but that's the way it goes. So Necrons. Now, Necrons are known right now as kind of the scourge of the middle tables. I don't think any of them are winning anything right now, but there are a lot of them like going 4-1.
Yeah.
You know, 5-1.
This is actually my like pretty good friend that I play. He's the guy I probably play with the most just for fun. Like we just play together. And we've played probably like, I don't know, 10 games, just Necrons versus like, not that many, probably like 5 games Necrons versus Grey Knights or something, just the two of us. And he's very good. And he has a tough list. I think Necrons the OBSEC can still be really hard just to get like back from the point deficit. But this was the mission where you get to move the objectives. And initially he picked to place terrain first, which is going to let me move objectives first. And we talked about how I could move the back objective to get it into his deployment zone so that he can't get the Necron secondaries on it. And so then we switched. We switched to his place in terrain first because I was like, he didn't know about that. And then I got to take the middle.
Sporting of you.
Well, he's a good friend of mine. He's like
Yeah.
we played, I think either way is an advantage for me because then I got to place to like either way works out okay. Like he gets better secondaries, but then I put the big ruin right like on the middle objective, and I just like put my apothecary, my paladins, and like obsec the middle objective, with like a whole army there. And then also again, this was a matchup where I think I pointed out that like I got the pregame move and he knew it, and he pregame moved his scarabs and some stuff up into like one of his objectives. I pregame moved my interceptors, jumped through the terrain, and charge. I had like a 3-inch charge because he'd move forward, and my interceptors, with some shooting and some assistance, like wiped out an entire 9-man scarab squad, which is like a third of his like fast
Yeah.
obsec over the
Wait,
board.
Scarab or Wraiths?
Scarabs,
Okay.
9 like bases of scarabs or whatever.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of wounds of Scarabs. That's what,
Yeah.
32 wounds or something?
Yeah, so I shot them with like Dreadknights and then charged them.
36 wounds.
Yeah, it's a shitload. And he, of course, he did poorly on his reroll or rolling for resing or whatever. But anyways, like I basically got a really big advantage. And the last thing that I would say versus Necrons is he has a big unit of the destroyers with the guns, the like 6 of them or something.
Yeah.
And the second game in a row
heavy
against him,
destroyers.
I've been able to get a squad of interceptors and melee with them. And once I got in melee with them, like he can't. Their Necrons, as far as I know, have no fallback and shoot like ability in their book.
And even if you had that, like, I don't know, those heavy destroyers are very cool, but they only one shot each. So even if you could fall back and shoot, like you're gonna fall back.
The ones that they're 3. He has a mix, so there's like one of the guys that has a 1 shot, and the other one's all like 3 shots. But the 3 shots still do like D3 damage each or something. Like they're still very strong.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, he had like I got that in melee, and I just kept those in melee for a long, long time. He did veil into my backfield and make a 9-inch charge, which actually took off my banner and my obsec back there. But I had my Grand Master back there. I was able to like come in and charge. And so, anyways, I think Necrons are really strong. But if you can control the middle of the table with the terrain on a 5 objective mission with like the obsec aura, like they're as you said, they're middle table because I think their individual data sheets just like can't hold up to that sustained fight. And I ended up eventually fighting the Silent King in melee and killing him with Drago and the Paladins right in the middle of the table. But keeping those destroyers locked up and taking it, I think empiric amplification on scarabs. Oh, that's the other thing. I empirically amplified the scarabs.
Okay. I was wondering how that math was working out. I'm like, how did you kill that many scarabs?
Yeah,
like, that makes a lot more sense.
Shot them with some psi cannons and then meleeed them with my interceptors, and every halberd wounding on 2s on scarabs and doing 3 damage each on the halberds is like. And
were you in convergence? Yeah. Okay. So then there you go. That answers that. Yeah.
So like that was critical.
We do have a question. It's from Derek again, Apshay. Now that we know how to actually pronounce his name, he's asking about what tides you started, which we talked about at the beginning of the interview.
Yeah. Convergence, like 90% of the time, I'd say. If I'm going first, I'm like almost always convergence, unless I really know I'm not going to get like in range of anything on that turn. Then I might do shadows. But I'm in convergence. I've probably war shaped like once or twice through the whole tournament, maybe once, and most of the time it's convergence. I think the mortal wounds in melee and the range of the psi cannons is just insane.
Yeah. So there you go, Derek. And then Damned Legion wants to know when we're playing each other, JP.
Well, I used to live in Portland. That's where I went to med school, but now I'm out here in Wisconsin, so a little bit far of a travel to play. But when I'm back in Portland visiting sometime, we'll try to get a game in.
Yeah, well, there we go. I've got a garage that I can host 3 tables at the same time. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Which means I can run my own little RTT now, and I'm thinking about it. But
you should.
Anyway, yeah. Great. We do have one more comment. They say that there is an application for that. There are 2 ways that Necrons can actually get fallback and shoot. Although one is you have to use a protocol, which means you have to choose that card beforehand. So you're probably, and then to have 1 unit fallback and shoot, choosing a whole protocol seems like a risky play, but so probably not going to run into that. And then apparently the Royal Warden can also do that, but I don't even know what the Royal Warden is.
Character?
Yeah, I assume so. It's called Royal, but all the Necron HQs look the same to me. So, except the Silent King, obviously, he's
like Silent King, and then everything else is like a
yeah.
little dude with the staff.
But like a Technomancer and a Chronomancer and a Royal Warden, I bet you if you stacked all three of them side by side and offered me $50 if I could guess all three right, I would get $0.
Same. Yeah, that's good to know though. He's kept like looking at his book, and I'm like, do you have anything? And he's like, no. So
because heavy destroyers are infantry, right? They aren't vehicles, so
yeah, they cannot shoot in combat. They cannot shoot in combat. So
that sucks.
Yeah.
All right, I'm really curious about your next matchup. You went into Creations of Bile, which I gotta be honest with you, I've never played, but everything I've read makes this sound like an absolute nightmare.
I told this guy from the get-go, I was like, I think you're I wanted to play you the least of anyone here. And he like chuckled. He's again, really nice guy, really good player. I again got to go first. I left big vacuums on the sides, and I just didn't go, and I put my train in the middle kind of, but I didn't go into the middle. And I think this was big, as I like really went along the edges of the map. I was staying like almost 30 inches away, like exactly 30 seconds shoot my Dreadknights. And this is one game where I split up like Drago and the Paladins and stuff. Went like Paladins and Apothecary went to one corner and Drago went to the other. And again, this is one where he has really strong stuff, but it doesn't have OBSEC, a lot of it. So I got strikes into the corners and put banners down, and I got interceptors into the corners. And I think he has like no shooting. So basically I just like sat out in these like open areas, and he did end up like getting into me. And at one point his one of his bricks of chosen, he put like, I don't know, some stratagems into them onto my Paladins. And that is the time I did pop the transhuman. Like, even for all that CP, it was worth it. And I interrupted, even though he's going to fight on death, I like did that and interrupted with them. Or no, I just interrupted instead of that because he fought somewhere else first. And I interrupted with the Paladins, and the Paladins killed all but like 3 of them. And then the Paladins died, like half of them died on the swing back because he fought on death.
Yeah, fights on death,
but,
man.
like,
That's so
afterwards,
good.
I brought him back. I brought back one with my Apothecary, and like I had enough left to like hold the corner basically. And also, this is another one of the mortal wounds were huge, and he pointed out to me like my Librarian killed probably 7 out of 10 possessed in one squad, or 6 out of 10 just with like 2 turns of mortal wounding them. So yeah, I think this is one where like, and this is the one where I got the Interceptors. They fought his possessed and lived because he only had like 2 possessed left. And then I spent the CP for them to move, shoot, and charge, and they moved like and charged the cultists in his corner. And that like was where all of his OBSEC and everything was. And so once I got the Interceptors into that corner, I was also getting 3 on engage. This is one I did engage, no prisoners, and purifying, I think. And I was just way ahead at that point.
Wow, that's so cool.
But
I would have loved to see that game played, because like this is like Creations of Bile. I've listened to podcasts about it, I've read like articles and like Reddit threads on how to play it and like how to counter it, and it's just an army that doesn't. I don't know. I'm a very visual learner anyway, so like if I don't see it, it doesn't exist, and I don't know how it plays, and I just cannot wrap my head around this army. Other than the fact that I know that they get fight on death army wide, which is insane. Yeah. It's the like Twilight Harlequins on crack.
Yeah, they fight on death army wide, and then he has like +1 inch to move, and he does this trick with he had a 10-man Terminator brick that he kills a Terminator with his caster, and then reses it to get extra move, and then like he basically can like his ability to like get charges off is insane with his with that ability to like he can just keep killing a Terminator until he can like get however many mortal wounds on it he needs to kill one, to then res one further ahead and make his charge.
Oh, I see. It's the res game. Like,
Yeah.
like you see Necrons also do this
Yes.
when they recharge or when they resurrect. Like they can string out whole. I don't know. I mean, we don't see warrior blobs now, but like you could
Yeah.
string out like a ton of them as long as they're all within
Yeah.
2 inches. You can string them out and grab an objective almost.
Yeah, and no, he could. I think his really deadly stuff just doesn't have obsec, and I just went around the edges of the board and like I put my terrain to be able to just like touch those objectives, and then left as much open area as possible. And I think that worked. I don't think it's an easy matchup at all. I think he's a very good player, is tough, but they give up a ton of points on no prisoners, and once you like, if they get a unit all the way across the board to you with advance and charge and whatnot, then and you take it down, then that like they have nothing but following that usually. They don't have enough big bricks of stuff that does that. So
So you're
and with no
mostly
shooting, you can like be completely out in the open. And they have like the only shooting he has is Terminators have like those short melta gun, like combi meltas.
okay. So 12-inch range or whatever.
So he has like
Yeah.
nothing in long range.
All right, good to know because I'm sure I'm gonna run into a creations of bio player eventually, and then I'm
I think that
gonna.
guy got like third. Like he beat everybody. He lost. I think I was like his only loss. He like crushed everyone else. So creations are very scary, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, wow, you won that one, 100-69. Nice.
Purposely.
But like, that's not.
We talked out like the last turn because at that point he had like Abaddon was dead. Everything else was like he had just his Terminators and some cultists left and a caster, and we just kind of talked out the last turn. And I was able to get like as long as I got a couple purifyings off, I was like maxing it out. So
Your comment about Abaddon reminded me. Did you ever do you use Thunderous Smite? Or sorry, Thunderous Stride. Thunderous Stride.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have not, and I did not charge Abaddon with any Dreadknights, but I do think it's a good good use of it. I have not done it though yet. I did not need to.
I killed Gasgul once with it. That was pretty funny.
Nice.
Which was a complete flex. I didn't have to do it, but I did it anyway, and it was funny.
His Abaddon charged my Paladins, and I fell back with them, and then I psychicked him 3 wounds, shot him 3 wounds with a Dreadknight, and then I charged him with my Librarian and my Apothecary, and they did 3 wounds between the 2 of them.
Ugh. And what do you do on the clapback? Like pick them both
dead.
up? Yeah. Oh! That's what killed.
Abaddon Abaddon doesn't get the fight on death.
Right.
Because Abaddon's Black Legion.
Right. I thought you meant it wasn't enough to kill him. So
no, it was exactly 9 wounds.
See, that's called efficiency. No more, no less.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Someone's asking about Red Corsairs. Have you played them at all? I think they get Army Ride, Advance and Charge, right? I don't know what else they get.
They're like fast. Yeah, no, they're fast and they can charge. I've never played against them though.
Yeah.
But I have to look them up. But
I don't see
I'm
them
more scared of the.
but...
Is it Emperor's Children? Who are the ones that have like?
Yes, the Sonic Blasters on their. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. There was a guy who was playing those with the drop pod or the Dread Claws, whatever, and a bunch of those, and I luckily didn't face him, but he also killed a lot of people with his army, so I was scared of that one.
They also have Super Obsec. So Red Corsairs are 2. They count as 2 models for Obsec, unless they're 10 wounds or more, and then they're 5 models.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. So good luck. You're never taking an objective back.
No.
Before we move away from creations, though, are they a pretty elite army? Are they really expensive? Like, I'm sure with all those Terminators and those the possessed, like those are expensive models, right?
Well, from a Grey Knights player, they do not seem expensive enough. As I'm going to be honest, I had never played them, so I looked up all their units the night before on like Wahapedia and stuff, and I was like, I don't remember it now, but like their chosen, their possessed are like under 30 points a model. They're like 27 or 28 points or something a model.
You're gonna make me cry, aren't you?
Yeah, look up possessed right now, and you're gonna probably want to cry unless they've like been changed somehow. But they're like way cheaper than our Paladins or Terminators. They're toughness 5.
The
They're 3 wounds.
chosen or the possessed?
Possessed are toughness 5, I think.
So possessed are 20 points model base. I don't know what their upgrades are, and chosen are 25 points model.
Yeah. The only upgrade they do is they put like a mark on them, like the whole squad, I think, which is like
Like
gives
a mark
them,
of Zeech or whatever.
yeah, one of those marks, which is like 10 points, I think. I think it's the whole squad. You don't have to do it, I think, per guy or whatever. And yeah, so their bricks are like they're like the cost of an interceptor squad. Like a 10-man interceptor squad is these guys that have like fight on death, 3 wounds, 4 attacks or something, like toughness 5, strength 5, and you're like, why? I don't understand. Like they don't have good guns, but that's like it. And
Yeah.
Stormbolters aren't that great either. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But when you think about like the charge and the fight phase are basically a second and third movement phase for a lot of these armies.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
wow, they're fast all of a sudden.
He had a 10 blob of Terminators, 2 10 bricks of Chosen, and a 10 brick of Possessed. And then the rest was like, he had some Raptors, some Cultists, and his characters. So he basically had like 40 models of like 3 wounds at least each that are like hard to kill and die and like fight on death. And so I lost a lot of units fighting them, but I was able to keep my distance and kind of whittle them down. So
cool.
And I honestly avoided the Terminators. I'd never gotten melee. I like just went away from them as much as I could.
Yeah. Unless you can guarantee that you can kill like 3/4 of the unit with mortal wounds before you even go in. Yeah, I don't like the clapback is just too good.
Yeah.
Fight on death is gnarly, especially in a 10-man brick. Yeah. Like what is that? That's insane.
Yeah. A 10. The one thing I will point out is I think is Chosen or one of the units, the weapons are only like damage 1 or something. Like they have a decent, I don't remember which one it is, but this is one of the things that surprised me is like he had a lot of wounds, but they weren't high damage weapons. I don't remember if it was the Possessed or the
really
Chosen. But that was one thing that surprised me in combat. It felt reasonable, and also one of them, their AP is not as terrible. It was like 2 instead of like some stuff was like 4 or whatever, but like some of it was like 2. And on some units, 2 again is not too bad.
Oh man. I mean, can't think of anything that gets over 4 in melee with AP. I can't think of anything. At least we only on
get
infantry.
3.
Right.
Drago gets to 4,
yeah.
and that's it.
No, I'm like thinking, I play Deathwatch as well, and you can get power swords and heavy thunder hammers if you're in assault doctrine. They can be -4. I guess the Xenophase Blade could be -5 if you're in Assault Doctrine, but that's only one model that's going to have that. So, and it's a 10-point upgrade, so nobody runs them on their their normal squads. Yeah, I can't think of anything that gets to -5 in combat really easily. That's not on like like a knight or something.
Yeah. It's the accursed weapons on the Chosen are only damage 1. So they are -3 AP or whatever, but they're only 1 damage.
That's a power sword, which isn't bad. -3 AP,
they
1 damage.
3 attacks each, +1 for this weapon. So there are 4 attacks base. Yeah. And like they get strength on the charge, and they he spent, I think, CP on some stuff. I don't know all their stratagems, but yeah. Anyways. Yeah, they're a scary army. I do not look forward to facing them, but it went okay, so I can't complain.
Yeah, that's awesome. So power swords with +1 attack. So they're like a power sword and chain sword combined.
Yes, they're cursed weapons or something like that.
That's pretty cool. All right, your last match 6. So you're in game 6, 2 days. I don't know if you're a big drinker or what, but you probably partied the night before.
Did have beers at the tournament, so that was nice.
Yeah.
This one I think this was like by far the most luck I think I had. This was a guy, Eric. He's like he's probably the best player around the region. He's really good. He's won multiple tournaments. He's my second tournament RTT ever played. He stomped me with his Ynnari, and that's when I first met D cannons and learned how much I hated them. He was playing Tyranids. Yeah, he was a super nice guy. And also one thing that he was nice about, as for some of my other opponents, is I'm still learning and I'm not the fastest. And he didn't pull out the clock. He was like, look, it's the final match. Let's just like play it, to completion, which is really nice because I was definitely slower than him. But so one, I did get to go first, and thank God because I did not put my terrain well this match. Like if I had gone second, it would have been devastating, I think. This is the match. This is the annoying thing. This is the one match where you're not allowed to do a map. You can't do a pregame move. I was playing Blades of Victory, so
Oh no.
or you can't pregame move into the neutral zone. Like you can pregame move,
Oh,
along
okay.
the edge.
But I mean, everybody knows that's why you choose a
Yeah.
pregame move in the first
So
place.
that sucked. But again, luckily I got the roll off and I was able to move like most of my army into cover. But he had set up his terrain really well. He's really good at this, and he was playing Leviathan Tyranids or whatever, where he had, I don't know, like 7 Carnifexes or something or whatever. They're all like he had like 3 squads of 2, maybe 6 Carnifexes. I don't know. They had a shitload of Carnifexes. They have the gun that does like it's like Strength 9 AP 3 3 damage or D3 damage or whatever. And then he had like they're all ballistic skill 3. And he set up all these firing lanes, and I just did not set up my terrain in a way that was smart. So he on turn 1 and then he had the Termagant and the Termagant, like he had a 30 brick of Termagants, and then he could spawn the other 10. So I moved everything into cover and put up some banners and stuff, and he took me down to a 0-point primary on turn 2. He shot me off of my home objective completely, and then he moved Termagants in and took Obsect away. Both, even though I had 12 models of Obsec on the middle, he put like 15 Termagants on there. And then he had this like a ton of spore mines. He had like the
biovores or whatever that
like, he also had the
fire them.
fortification that spits out spore mines.
What?
So he had
People
like
use fortifications?
yes, he did.
The Sporo site is what it's called.
Yeah.
Or
so,
Sporocyst. Ugh, even worse.
Yeah. So he took me down to a 0-point primary in turn 1, or at the end of turn 1. Mostly killed my non-Grandmaster Dreadknight. He had it at like 3 wounds, and he had taken like all of my objectives, taken off all of my banners, and he had I had done like no damage to him basically. And I was sitting there looking, and I was like, okay, this is like start of my turn 2. I just sat there, and I was like, I think he'd moved everything forward pretty far because he had this whole army of Termagants, and then he had spore mines like covering a ton of stuff. And so I said, well, like we're just gonna send it. So I took literally every single model of my army and went as far forward as I could into someone took a picture of it, but there's like all of my Grey Knight infantry, except for the squads that had already died, but like 20 interceptors, probably 10 strikes, 7 paladins, all my characters, literally everything. I just moved it. I left across the objectives, went over, and my plan was I had to kill like everything on that turn, and I killed like almost everything I needed to on that turn. I got like a 9 or 10 inch charge or something on my paladins, which let me wrap around his Turvagon, the like big boss HQ thing. Mm-hmm. And that let me get everything else in a melee. Like I got my apothecary in a melee, my strikes, my interceptors. I shot down one of the Carnifexes, and I charged 3 more. And I took everything down that I charged except for, and I killed his 30-person Termagant squad down to exactly the last wound, killed the last one. I had no spare wounds at the end of the melee. I killed his last Termagant, and I killed his Termagant, and I killed like 3 of the 4 Carnifexes I charged and took 1-to-1 wound. And like, I was like, all right, like now I have a shot, basically, was at the end of that turn. And so from then on, we both scored really low. I don't know what they put the points at, but like
I can tell you if you're curious.
Yeah,
it was 61-45.
Yeah, that still feels generous because I also took engage, and I think I got engaged for like 1 or 2 turns at that, like turns 4 and 5, because everything was on one half of the map, and like that was all of our fighting. His spore mines did insane damage. I didn't realize they could advance. And so when you roll a 6 on an advance on a spore mine and they're already moving, they like move 10 and just blow up in your face. So off of that turn, the next turn I was able to get into his zoanthropes in melee. And I by the end of the game, I think I had like 2 paladins left. Like my grandmaster, nope, he died. I think I had maybe like 6 interceptors left, and I had like one strike marine left or something. That was like my entire army was left was like 8 models, and he had like also nothing, like 1 Carnifex and like the Biovores. That was like it, at the end of the game.
Wow, that's crazy.
So yeah, that was just a crazy game. I got definitely lucky on like my charges that turn. I just put everything in. I just put all my chips in the middle and like had to roll the dice because there was no way of coming. I couldn't play carefully anymore. Like I was so far behind, and he was just gonna stop me. So I think killing the Termagants and the Turbigon so he couldn't keep bringing them back and getting like prioritizing that was huge, and getting into melee with the Zoanthropes, and getting them
you gotta
like was huge.
Yeah, those thropes of various types have to die. They're so awful.
Well, my apothecary also made some critical saves, and my apothecary, I had to position him at one point so that he was giving obsec to 2 different units so I could even hold any objectives. Because I got my paladins to his home objective by charging and then piling in and consolidating. I got all the way to his back objective. But I had like 1 apothecary and like 2 squads just exactly within range to get obsec. And it was like a really close game. Like honestly, he killed everything. He killed Drago. He killed my librarian. He killed like everything I had on my side. It was really, really close game. So I got lucky for sure on multiple cases. And overall, it was a fun game. But yeah, it was very hard. And I think if we played that game like 10 times, I'd probably lose like 8 of those 10 games or whatever.
Yeah, you just got. I mean, the dice tell their own story. Like anybody who's played a game 40K can easily tell you that. Anybody who plays, like Dungeons and Dragons will definitely tell you that. Like, the dice. Sometimes the dice are gonna do whatever they're gonna do, and there's nothing you can do about it.
The funny thing is, it was really swingy. Like the turn I needed, I killed like everything. My dice were hot. The next turn, I needed if I failed 3 or 2 purifying flames on like the 5 up. I couldn't even get it. And it was like if I made either of those, my librarian lives and like couldn't do it. Like just couldn't do it.
That sucks.
So like multiple things happened like that. So it was a swingy game, but it was definitely fun. I would say the other thing is spore mines. I was like, I've got a 5 up against mortals. Like how bad can this be if I like get hit by a few of these? It took 1 turn of getting hit by spore mines because I'd never played against Tyranids, and then I started storm boltering them down like every turn because they will just slaughter. I mean, if they roll like a 5 or a 6, something like that. It's like D3, and like they have like 6 spore mines, so like they can wipe out a whole squad just like so fast.
Yeah, it's funny how they've become like they started as a meme. Yeah. Like in the 9th ed book, the like Tyranid book was released, and I saw some friends like talking about let's just make a list where we throw out as many spore mines as we possibly can, and it's something like I don't know, they could make 18 or 22 a turn or something. Yeah. And it's like, well, they can't hold objectives and they can't charge, and they like they don't do anything. They just can potentially carpet bomb you effectively. Yeah. But you think about how do you. Yes, they do movement
more block. Than I didn't realize. Like I didn't realize how much they movement block because like even stuff with fly, you can't just fly over them, and that feels really like you can't move. And my teleporters, who was like interceptors, are supposed to like, they're jumping through the warp, like still can't go over them or near them.
Yeah. What? Why can't they?
If you pass, or you can, but if you pass over them, they will explode.
It's only if you end a movement there, right?
No, it's a
it's your movement at all.
So if you go over them, they can explode. At least that's what it was explained to me. So
I mean, I'm reading it right now, and I don't. It says each time a model in this unit ends a move within 3 inches of any enemy units, or an enemy unit ends a move during which any of its models moved within. Okay. Ugh.
Yeah. So like they move block. You can't end.
What a weird phrasing on that too.
Yeah, you
That's very
can't end
concerning.
with an engagement range. So he like blocked a whole path. Part of the reason I went the way I did is he blocked the whole other path, and I was like, all right, we're going all of this side. And you can't end your movement with an engagement range of them. So not, even if you want to go take the mortal wounds, you still can't stop your movement, normal movement with an engagement range of them.
No.
So he like lines them up in a way where I couldn't get where I needed to go. And then on top of that, you can't move over them without taking all the mortal wounds. So they're nasty. They're like really, really dangerous. I think he will kill a lot of people with spore mines, as he did over that tournament.
Weird, because like I thought spore mines were always just memey. I knew they had some utility for movement blocking and stuff, but I didn't realize they were that good. Like that one thing you said, where even if if any of your movement came within 3 inches of it,
Yeah.
once they end it, it explodes. That's like,
Yeah.
huh.
So like a jetpack unit flies over it, you still count it.
So if an aircraft flies over it,
Yes,
you still
they
count
can
it.
blow it. Yeah.
That
Doesn't make sense to me on that one, other than
seems
I'm assuming
really
they're supposed to be
bizarre.
they're supposed to be floating in the sky, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, so they're like bobbing around. I guess I always thought with the name like mine, I guess I
Yeah.
thought they were like slithering on the ground or something. But okay,
Are supposed to be fly
all right,
movement.
got it.
So, anyways, very dangerous list. He's very good player. It was probably the bloodiest. Like, it was the fewest units I've had at the end of a game, other than one game I've been tabled in the past. But it was tough.
So how do you get 6 carnifexes, or are you just kind of like you're like,
Squads of two. You can
oh,
they
there's
can be
squads of
units of
two.
two. I don't know how he ran them the way like knights run armatures, where like they start out together and then they can like do their own thing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So a unit of carnifexes is 1 to 3. By the way, those motherfuckers only start at 115 points.
Yes.
I mean, every upgrade they have is at least 5 to like 10 points, but yeah.
They do damage in melee too. They're like 7 attacks that slaughter Marines.
Yeah. And they take 1 less damage.
Yep.
When it's died, it will, it explodes. It adds 1 to its attack if it charges or performs a heroic intervention. Wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Monstrous Brood is an inbuilt ability where they have to be deployed together, and then after that, they just split up.
Yeah,
So,
that's
wow. I didn't know you could run theoretically 9 of these in one list.
yeah, they're scary.
I mean, you
Although
wouldn't.
one other thing I'll
That'd be
say
like
for this
1,200 points, but
strong 1,200 points.
yeah, that's true.
This was another matchup where the 3d6 deny was pretty huge. I used that stratagem and I stopped the one where they can advance and charge or whatever. Catalyst, I think it is, or something.
Kettles is a 5 Feel No Pain. It might be Overrun. I don't remember all of it.
I don't remember the name of it, but stopping the advance and charge and also stopping Catalyst, the 5 of Feel No Pain, like those two powers. And at one point, my librarian was within 12 inches of his Neurothrope or whatever, because everything was next to each other. And so you get effectively like extra 2 to deny with the librarian because of the Psychic Hood and the Grey Knights. So that was huge too.
That is an excellent point that I have forgotten. And then said all funny. Forgotten. So Psychic Hood, right? Does it have it? It does. Oh my god, that could have come in really handy against my last match against Eldari, because my librarian was in the thick of it.
Yeah, if you get in the thick of it,
I forgot he has +2 to deny.
Pick him to deny when you have an important thing to deny in the middle of the fight. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How do you feel with what's the Tyranid thing called where you always are at -1 to cast?
I did not know about that. And also you take more mortal wounds if you perils or something. So that was not fun. And I was in range on 2 of my 3 objective markers. I was trying to Purifying Ritual. He just like, I failed a lot of psychic casts that game. The -1 to cast was terrible.
And then you get to learn how good base Grey Knights without any psychic powers are, which the answer is not that good.
Like,
Far less good than they should be.
yeah, I feel like that was another example where it's like I look at these newer codexes and I'm like, I feel like there's so many like pluses. Like their zoanthropes get like a shitload to cast if there's 3 of them in the unit, and their neurothrope can just give himself 3d6 to cast without spending CP on it,
Yeah.
and then they give everyone around them -1 to cast. It's like, why are they like better psychers than the army that's all psychers, as well as have these like monstrous things? So it's tough. That was very tough, especially just because I took Purifying Ritual because I still think it's the most consistent points I can get.
That's fair. I mean, you won, so I don't know if you were wrong.
Yeah,
but
it's hard.
Yeah, I don't know what I would do into that list. That list just, I would probably play cagey as shit, try to stay on my like side of the board, but then I'd just get apparently overwhelmed with Spore Mines. So,
well, the other thing is if you don't, or at least in the Spore Mines are overwhelming, and also the Termagants, if you don't kill them, he brings back so many every turn, as well as spawns a new unit of 10 once a game. So like with 30 of them, and he puts a 5-up Feel No Pain and a 5-up Invulnerable on them. So they're like, yeah, they're crappy little units, but like you can't kill them.
yeah.
And I think you lose the long game against that army a lot because it's really hard. They can dish out way more than you can on an average turn, and so that's why at least my experience in that one game was just like go for broke, and it worked out. But I think that it's a hard army to play that cagey against as Grey Knights. Like I think maybe Tau or some other armies can play cagey against them and then like come roaring in and kill a bunch of stuff. But
yeah,
Grey Knights, it's hard.
It's damn, these things are so good. Like I'm just looking at the data sheet on Wahapedia here. I'll switch over to my my browser view here, which, sorry JP, you can't see, but you know, they have 9 wounds, toughness 7, so they're already a dreadnought, you know. Move 8, also like a dreadnought. Also they have awesome names for their weapons, like Death Splitter with Slimer maggots. They got tons of upgrades available, so you can run them pretty much like however you want. And then yeah, they hit like a truck. They got -1 damage, so also like a dreadnought. But they, you know, they just add 1 attack on the charge, so it's kind of like they have was it, what's the Space Marine thing called where they get +1 on the charge? I can't remember the name now. Because as Grey Knights, we just have it built in, and I don't remember.
Assault Doctrine or something?
No, that's +1 AP on melee weapons. Someone in chat will remind me. And as soon as they do, I'll feel like an idiot. But
additionally, one other point about the Carnifexes, at least in this list, is for Leviathan, every unit gets like I think a reroll a hit or a wound or something, kind of like as a army-wide thing.
yeah.
And so as soon as they split up and act on their own, each Carnifex gets that. So he's like shooting at you, and every Carnifex is re-rolling, like all 6 of them or whatever, re-rolling.
Yeah, all those buffs that they can give the whole like army through their, what is it, their like symbiotic link or whatever. Yeah, a synaptic link. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And they nerfed the one warriors could do, right? Because like warriors could give +1 to hit or something.
3 or 4 warriors. I think people are running way less warriors now, basically, because there's not as good. But they have so many other good units that it's like doesn't seem to slow them down too much.
I mean, there's a reason they've been owning the meta for a long time.
Yeah.
The good news is they can't take Abhor the Witch against you.
That's true.
They
but they can cast spell. Their Psyker can cast on you without being in range of your deny through Synapse.
Yep.
That's the one that feels the most like, come on.
So you didn't play when Maleceptors were everywhere, huh?
Yeah, I haven't played against Maleceptor, no.
So there was a time, hand me my cane, that wasn't that long ago, but the like double and triple Maleceptors could do something like I'm probably gonna get the specifics wrong, but if they just successfully cast anything, Closest enemy unit takes 3 mortal wounds. So imagine if like your paladins cast Armored Resilience on their own asses and then did 3 mortal wounds to the closest enemy unit just for free. And it was on like a 240 point like toughness 7 12 wound model or something. So you're like, what am I supposed to do against this thing? Can't psychic it, can't shoot it, can't melee it.
Yeah. Their Tervigon, when there's Termagants around, you also can't shoot, despite it being like a 16 wound model or something.
What? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that thing was pretty insane. So.
Oh, the Tervigon, yeah, it's in HQ. Yeah, it is 17 wounds. So I don't know why you couldn't shoot at it.
It has an ability that if Termagants are around it, you can't shoot it.
Oh wow, yeah, look at that right there. Spawn Termagon. A wall of flesh, that's what it is. If it's 15 or more though. So that's a lot of Termagon.
Squad of 30, so
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. No, so it was a really fun tournament, really close games, but that was definitely the hardest one. That was the one where I needed the luck to go my way for sure.
Man, I really wish that one was cast somewhere. That would be a fun one to watch. Even though I know you're probably like shaking and your heart's racing and everything while you're playing, but Garrett is saying his first tournament ever was against unnerfed Leviathan nibs, which was a pick-up model simulator. So you got to put it on the board and then just take it right back off.
I'm sorry, man. That's rough. I'm glad I played the slightly nerfed Leviathan Tyranids.
Dude, the old Maleceptors. Like, I don't know if you're bored one night, go back like 6 months in competitive Warhammer Reddit history and just like search for Maleceptor, because you'll
all right.
The tears were rightly very, very, very free flowing at the time.
I'll have to take a look. I'll definitely take a look.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
All right, I'm gonna give everybody. It's been just over 2 hours. I know it's like what 11 o'clock where you're at right now, which is pretty
10,
late. It's 10. Okay.
10:05. Yeah, I'm 2 hours ahead in Milwaukee.
Gotcha.
So
yeah. Well, I'm gonna give everybody just a couple minutes more to ask any questions, but you know, what's in the new future for you, man? Are you gonna keep running Grey Knights? It sounds like you're gonna buy at least one Rhino.
I am gonna definitely buy a Rhino. I want to try. I've been building and just started to play a Tau army, mostly because I want something that's just like the opposite. Like they have not as my primary, but they have no psychic. They have no melee, pretty much.
That's true, yeah.
And so it just feels like a really good way to learn like the opposite style. So Grey Knights are still definitely my first and my love, but I'm gonna try that. And then we have a GT in Milwaukee in February, which I'm pretty excited about. I think that'll be bigger than this was, and I think people probably come hopefully from Chicago and around more and make that kind of a big thing. Because this last tournament was like an invitational. You had to play in like the yearly tournaments to get invited to this.
Yeah. I tried to shove invitational in the name of the tournament on the stream, but I couldn't make it fit. That's a big deal. Like, to be invited to an invitational in and of itself is like a thing. So that's awesome, man. Especially only being like having played for 5 months.
Since I was luckily, I feel like the only thing I got from playing in middle school and high school was I knew the general of like there's a movement phase and a shooting phase and a charge phase. And I know like the names of the armies. But other than that, all the competitive stuff was definitely, I watched a lot of YouTube stream games, helped a lot. Channels like this, you know, learning what other people do and stuff. And then still had to get, you know, beat up a couple times. So
absolutely. I mean, that's where you learn the most on your losses. So Andy does have one question though. He wants some advice on move blocking with Grey Knights.
Yeah, I think Grey Knights are like you're move blocking an opponent or getting move block, like they're move blocking you what to do. I guess I assume you want to move block.
Yeah, but, I suspect he means move blocking the enemy with Grey Knights.
Yeah, I think Grey Knights are harder to move block with because unless you're running, like Rhinos are probably honestly one of the better things to do it with.
Totally agree. Yeah.
I feel like with Grey Knights, a lot of what I'm doing is like hiding until I jump out and I engage stuff. And like that move, like getting in a melee move blocks a lot of stuff. And like I think one thing people forget is how much movement you can get out of the charge phase with pile in and consolidate, and you can really like wrap around things, or you can like other thing is leaving units out of the melee to block something. I'll do that frequently where I'll take less attacks, but I'm blocking a spot that I want to block, so that they can't get to the objective or can't get between these buildings or whatever. So I think that's one thing people forget is like it's okay to take the hit on less damage if you're blocking something. And then I think Interceptor's move makes them still the easiest, but I try to leave always a couple guys in cover if you're going to move block, and that really helps so that you can take some of the saves on the cover guys when you're getting shot up. But I think the best thing probably would be Rhinos. I think Dreadknights are just like awkward to get in there, and you don't want to lose them. They're so expensive, but something like a Rhino would be really good. And then Paladins are really good at move blocking. When you have armored resilience on them, you can just like they are so hard to kill, especially with the even though it's a 6-up, the 6-up feel no pain. Like you save one of those or two of those, and you save a Paladin, like
It feels
can totally
really
stop
good.
you.
Yeah.
So that'd be my
At this RTT last weekend, my first game against Necrons, actually, he had moved his big melee destroyers towards my Grandmaster, but I zoomed up my Paladins and they kind of wrapped him. And, you know, he's like, oh, that's not good. That's not what I want. And I'm like, but it's what I want, because now to get to my Grandmaster, you have to come through the Paladins, and I want you to come to the Paladins, because like the Paladins are gonna, I know they won't be rerolling ones because they're honored knights, but like they're not from the same brotherhood as my Grandmaster. But like, yes, come on, please fight my Paladins.
Yeah, it's so annoying. But at least they're core, I guess. But yeah, Paladins are really good at that. And then the last thing I'd say is Ghostly Bonds. I really liked it, and I'm gonna try it out more. Slowing things down is like, I think, an underrated thing to use.
So, not to tell you how to play, a suggestion: if you do run Prescient Brethren, their Brotherhood power is also a movement lockdown power. Yeah, so you can cast that, and then they get to decide if moving is worth potentially taking 6 mortal wounds, which is unlikely but theoretically possible. And if they have things like Banshees, like 5 Banshees is only 6 wounds total.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
You can lock down Banshees with it and then run away.
I want to try Prescient more, and I also want to try Rapiers. I haven't done Rapiers yet, and I feel like with the number, if you're running a lot of Interceptors, they seem getting an extra attack on like them seems pretty good.
Yeah, remember Tide of Convergence mortal wound is capped at 6 mortal wounds total, though. But the Word of Power, if you want to bring the worst chaplain in the entire game, you can bring the Grey Knights chaplain and get unlimited theoretical mortal wounds on 6s.
Rarely get to 6. I did against the Tyranid player on 1 melee. I did get to 7 and had to say, oh, I only do 6 mortal wounds instead of the 7th one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a good point. But I usually would still always like more attacks.
Yeah.
So that's my other brotherhood I want to try.
You can run falchions.
No thanks.
Yeah,
no thanks.
No one wants to run falchions.
Okay, now. Maybe in the
They're
future.
like way worse lightning claws.
Yeah. Maybe someday if they change the Grey Knights. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll do my little outro now. Thank you everybody for swinging by. Thank you for all your questions. Congratulations, JP. I think this is the biggest tournament finish we've seen for the Grey Knights in a while. Stay tuned. Sunday morning, 6 a.m. Pacific time. That's GMT -8. I will be live with Derek, who may or may not still not be in the stream at the moment, but he took second at a GT recently, fighting some of the strongest armies and the strongest players in the United States at the moment. And like, comment, subscribe, all that shit that everybody always asks you to do, and don't forget